is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie. Authorities are investigating the mysterious death and mutilation of a cow on a remote ranch in Oregon. The cow was found dead and mutilated at a property owned by ranchers Clancy and Stephen Roth. The rancher said there's no evidence of who did it or how they killed her. And this is not the first time the Roths have experienced cattle mutilation. 20 years ago, they found multiple cattle mutilated on their ranch. Cattle mutilations occurred widely in the West and Midwest in the 1970s, and last year there were several cases of cattle mutilations reported in Oregon. A 9,900-year-old human skeleton was found in a Mexican cenote. It's being referred to as one of the first persons to set foot in the Americas. The female skeleton was found submerged in the Chan Hole Cave. Her remains prove the region was inhabited by at least two different groups of the early Mesoamerican settlers, or the two groups emerged from a single group and developed distinctive physical characteristics over time. A recent report made to MUFON describes a cigar-shaped UFO, estimated to be 4 to 5 times the size of a commercial airliner. The craft was spotted over Kansas City, Missouri. Margie Kay, Assistant State Director for Missouri MUFON, alerted Kansas City Section Director Gene Walker, and both women watched the object for 20 to 30 seconds. A third witness corroborated their observations. Kay described the object as larger than a 747. A UFO was filmed by a YouTube user named Justified on February 1st. The video shows footage of a large round object hovering over a neighborhood in Tulare County, California. The UFO lingered in place for about 30 minutes before it disappeared following sunset. In a recent survey by Select Car Leasing shows that 1/3 of Londoners said they've encountered a ghost while driving a car. 1 in 7 people, about 13%, agree with this statement. I believe I've seen a ghost when driving. The poll found that 36% of people living in the Greater London area believe they've seen a road ghost at some point in their lives, compared to 15% of people in Scotland and 14% in northwest England. 15% of men have witnessed ghosts while driving on the highway, while only 11% of women have seen ghosts while driving. This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie.
We control all the newspapers and the television.
What's going on, ladies? It's me, the Night Stalker from the Night Stalker News. Are you dreading a lonely night on Valentine's Day? Well, have no fear. I'll be on standby for you live on the Fringe FM Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. You can take part in a once-in-a-lifetime chance to bid in a date with me. It's 2020, and apparently e-dates are all the rage right now. Enjoy a virtual, romantic evening with the Night Stalker at your expense. But look at it this way. You get a night with a handsome man on Valentine's Day, and I get a new news studio. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Come bid and be my Valentine. Friday night, February 14th on Light in the Void. Live, only on the Fringe FM.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast
stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and I am your host, Joe Root. It is Wednesday night, the 12th on into the 13th. And I wonder, have you ever wondered? I wonder, but I wonder if you've ever wondered all about the conspiracies. Surely some of us wonder how true they are. Like, what are the facts, really? Like, what's going on? What's the psychology behind of it all? What are we not being told? What's true and what's not? Now, out of all of them, if you're not a conspiracy theorist, as many of them as there are out there, surely some of them got to be true. Assassinations, our questionable history, the real story of our civilization, New World Order, 9/11, false flags, that kind of stuff. Do we have all the facts? What part of it is a psyop? What's true? What's not? This and more with author, speaker, and conspiracy theorist Andy Thomas coming up here in just a second. Also want to thank all of you guys for coming out tonight. If you want to join in on the chat, just go to thefringe.fm/chat, and that'll get you into our Discord server. And if you want to call into the show, you can at 1-800-588-0335. That's the call-in number, or 501-424-5130. Also got to give a big shout-out to our sponsors, GetTheTea.com, AncientLifeOil.com, and Metaphorical Archaeology. Please give them a shout-out. Tell them the Fringe FM sent you, and get that stuff. All of it, the tea, the oil, and book an appointment with Barbara if you've had a paranormal experience that you just can't get over and you need some private, very nurturing help. Also, head over to UFOseekers.com, backed and supported by us, if you want to look into a journalistic approach for, ufology. That's what you need to do. You need to go to UFOseekers.com, at UFOseekers on Twitter, and all of their videos and the new episodes and stuff are on YouTube, youtube.com/UFOseekers. All right, so I know you guys are chomping at the bit because conspiracy, man, it is like all the rage. That's the big stuff. I mean, if I just did a show about conspiracies, I'd probably have 4,000 more listeners a night. But I'm a bit eclectic. But it doesn't mean that I don't think about this stuff. I want to know what's real and what's not. I want to figure out, especially things like the Kennedy assassination. That's a big one. We still talk about that stuff today. But I am no expert on this. So our guest here has pretty much studied all of this stuff, wrote about it in his new book, and for 3 decades, Andy has investigated many truth and mystery subjects such as conspiracy theories, the paranormal, covering up crop circles, UFOs, ghosts, and a ton of enigmas. And he's always making them accessible and avoiding polarization to find tantalizing middle groups to evoke animated discussion. He has appeared on many popular TV shows on the BBC, NBC, History Channel, National Geographic Channel, and other global outlets, and has had major UK spots on The One Show, Richard and Judy, Esther, GMTV, and Sky TV's hit series Pineapple's Dance Studios, and regularly features on radio programs and podcasts around the globe, and appeared in the theatrically released U.S. documentary Crop Circles, Quest for the Truth. Now, his latest book includes a brand new revised and updated edition of Conspiracies, the Facts, the Theories, the Evidence, and that's produced by Watkins Publishing and was produced in December of 2019. And also Christmas, a short history from Solstice to Santa, published by Ivy Press in October of 2019. Both books are widely available in the U.S., U.K., and Australia, and in many languages. Now, he's also the author of several other books, too, including Fields of Mystery, Quest for Contact, and the classic Vital Signs, a complete guide to the crop circle mystery, which has been described by many as the definitive guide to the circle controversy and was nominated for Kindred Spirit Magazine's 2002 Best Book Award. His book, An Introduction to Crop Circles, is another consistent seller and was updated in 2011. And Andy is also author of 4 books on Sussex, Southeast England, local history. And he's written for many journals and magazines, including Kindred Spirit and New Dawn, and he regularly contributes to the popular alternative journal Nexus magazine. Andy, it's good to have you back on the program.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Man, what do you got? So right off the bat, I know before we dig into the book, I want you to tell me what you think about this. the virus conspiracy. Have you heard about that? Have you looked into it? The man-made virus conspiracy to depopulate the planet. Has that one been on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing, of course, which, potentially could affect a lot of people. So if you look at where the virus broke out, you find that the main areas of China where it began, some are claiming, where they broke out is not so far from biological weapons research places. And some are saying that it's not accidental, that this is something which either, was deliberately put out there, or at least, it's not a virus that just grew from animals, which is what we're being told. Perhaps it escaped inadvertently from one of these complexes. Now, that is all denied. Of course it's denied. But some people do wonder. I mean, the only thing is, though, because I do know a lot of people are saying, well, yes, is this the big one? Is this going to wipe out the planet? Actually, the death rate from it is not that huge. Many people are recovering. So if it is intended to wipe us all out, it's not working terribly well. But at the same time, you don't want to get it. And I think it could be a bit like the Spanish flu back in 1918, which went right around the world. And that took out a lot of people before that was taken away. But of course, then you get further theories saying, well, maybe the point is to get us all to take new vaccines, and that suddenly that will be something that'll be introduced, which maybe won't do us a lot of good either. So these are all the classic kinds of things that people say, but unfortunately we also live in a world now where we're not allowed to talk about this stuff very easily. And some of these ideas are being suppressed and people are being taken off social media for saying it. So that's the problem. It's illustrating how, conspiracies of any kind is a very touchy subject these days when it comes to the mainstream media.
Yeah, especially YouTube, right? I mean, YouTube is really cracking down. They're surprising me about you remember when YouTube came out? They were like the underdogs. They were known for the little guy. The little guy could put up a YouTube video and you could talk about anything you wanted. And so I don't know what triggered this. Honestly, I think that they sold out to a lot of bigger companies. There's proof of this, honestly, and I'll tell you why. If you look up things like UFO or UFO Seekers, which is our partner, they are a licensed or official UFO channel. So YouTube actually labeled them like the only official UFO channel, one of the only, but still yet when you search or do the search engine, you can look in the analytics. You can see that those numbers are down, and they push up all of the big networks, Andy. NBC, CBS, like the big networks are the ones that matter now, not us anymore.
That's absolutely right. You're completely right. And I mean, to be fair to YouTube, they've been upfront about what they're doing. They did make an announcement back last year saying that they were going to have less conspiracy material. They weren't going to promote it so much. But it's become a major issue because, I mean, certain videos have just completely vanished, or if you look for them, you have to know the exact URL web address to find it. Otherwise, you can't find certain things in the search engines anymore. And when you get the recommended videos down the side, you're watching one and it tells you others that you might want to see. Instead of getting the ones that do relate to the kind of material you're watching, as you say, what you're getting is a promotion of just very mainstream stuff. So This is right across the board. We've seen stuff vanish from search engines and other places. People are getting deplatformed off of social media for daring to introduce conspiracy subjects that are now branded the classic fake news. So if somebody can brand something fake news, they feel that they can legitimately take it away. But of course, fake news is very subjective. And as we know, there's huge arguments about which is the fake news. And that's the problem. But it's being used to take away material that previously was easy to share. But that world is changing. And this is censorship, plain and simple.
Yeah, it is. It's like almost, and not just YouTube content, blogs. I even was talking to a friend of mine today where web servers are doing stuff like that. Like, I don't know, I don't want to just call them out, but we all know the popular web servers we build websites with. But this was a big name, somebody a lot of people uses. And they called in and said, "Why did you take my website down?" Well, they kind of stuttered about and said, "Well, it's we had one complaint." That stuff never happened. Just because somebody complained about the content on your website or whatever, they didn't take it down. It's getting kind of it's a little bit freaky to me, because I want to be able to have a home base, just like you would, like your website, truthagenda.org, right? You want to be able to know that you're going to be okay with all this. It's a bit sketchy.
You do, but yeah, it's a concern, though. I mean, in fact, if anybody goes onto my website, or indeed currently still on YouTube, have a look at a talk I gave last year. It's called Censored, and it's looking at what is happening. And I go through and list in detail all the things that are changing, all the things you're now not allowed to say online. And it is pretty scary stuff. And absolutely, people are being targeted now for things that you wouldn't have thought twice about saying, only a little while ago. So this is ratcheting up, and many people haven't noticed. And we need to take notice, and we need to make a fuss now, because, and you touched on it there, it's one thing to deplatform somebody from social media, say, but my fear is that the big companies that host websites, in the end, because they are under pressure not to publish fake news, inverted commas, is that they will not host certain websites. And the day that we get to that is the day we're going to have to go back to pamphleteering and literally try to distribute printed material again, because I can see a time coming where it's not going to find its way online. And we all need to make a big noise about this before it gets to that. But at the moment, that's where it's heading, and we might all need to invest in an old-fashioned typewriter again. So be warned, anybody out there that isn't aware of what's happening. Yes, we are heading for that kind of world unless we stop it now.
What do you think we can do to stop it, really, though? What could we do? I mean, are there some real solutions here for us to get our word back, get our voice back out there on especially the internet? What could we do?
It is difficult. I think making as loud a noise about it as possible helps. Getting people that haven't yet understood the level of the censorship that's going on also would be useful. Because it's funny, even people in the conspiracy world, if you want to call it that, or the alternative realms, a lot of them seem to have their heads in the sand. I'm astonished by how many people, they don't seem to see what's going on. We need to wake up and make a noise, write letters of complaint, raise it with our politicians, because at the moment our voices are being diminished by the day. Now, that doesn't mean that people have necessarily changed their minds about things like conspiracies, of course not, but it does mean that it's as if the powers that be are hoping that in a couple of generations' time, the people of the future will have forgotten that this kind of material was ever there, and they won't go looking for it, and they'll look back on us as being a little bit sort of unevolved for even having talked about it. That would seem to be the aim, and then we're going to wind up in the world of Brave New World or 1984, where literally information is taken away or burned. And that's what we're heading for at the moment. And, I'm not trying to sound gloomy here. I do believe that we could turn this around, and I do believe the pendulum will swing back when people go, hang on, we don't want this kind of world. We need to be able to have these conversations. But, maybe one other thing we can do in the meantime is preserve this information and make sure that this is still there when that pendulum does swing back. And then we will have helped contain this. What we don't want is for all the things being talked about and, my new book, Conspiracies. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm trying to get out there, and other people are. Maybe a book's a good way of doing it if we can't find it online. But we need to keep this stuff alive. Be aware is the watchword, and share knowledge of what is being taken away before it's too late.
Well, now that we're here, let's talk about just one thing that's really been on my mind lately is I've got some colleagues on the station, Crow 777, Jason Lindgren, Wayne McCroy Jr. Wayne's child has actually gotten ill from a vaccine, and I really looked into the stuff. I got some inside information, and these companies that Bill Gates was involved in and other companies that are releasing vaccines in other countries that a lot of people have died from. It's almost like they're beta testing this stuff, or at least that's what it looks like. You know, people beta test the software program or something, and then it kills a bunch of people, and they say, well, I guess we need to revise this. There's some real stuff going on. Bill Gates did a talk on TED Talks, which there's a ton of TED Talks now, but where he talked about depopulation, like where he was kind of for it in a way. It was kind of surprising. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, he's not the only person sort of, on a high level who has talked of the need to depopulate. Now, whether he means it in the way that some people have taken that is another matter. I mean, some of the listeners here, they may be aware of the Georgia Guidestones. Now, the Georgia Guidestones, this was a monument put up some years ago now, and on these stones are sort of engraved various things which purport to sort of tell us how the world should run in the future. And one of them is a slightly worrying number of what the optimum number of people should be on the planet. And the thing is that there seems to have been put up by people who have an intention to bring this kind of world about, and it recommends that we should only have a very small number of people on the world compared to what we have today. And the problem with that is, does that mean somebody would be willing to actually wipe a lot of us out to bring that about? And that's the fear. Would somebody, in classic sci-fi way, consider that releasing a virus or doing something, bringing into the public to get rid of us all, that they would actually see that as a necessary thing? Now, of course, that would assume, therefore, that anything that was spread, they would be immune to. Otherwise, presumably, they're endangering themselves as well. But, even if it's not going to go that far, the very fact that there are people out there who have voiced this view that, we need to drastically reduce, the level of the population, it does make some people fear. But we do need to be really careful because, one of the areas that has been absolutely stamped on out there now is anybody talking about anything like vaccines, alternative health, anything like that. That's the kind of stuff now that will get you deplatformed very quickly. And it's almost as if that's becoming the ultimate taboo. So this is an area, it's interesting, that's been moved in on by the authorities. And certainly just last week here in the UK, there are proposals for a new law to criminalise anybody that puts out any material which questions vaccination. Now, look, I am not an immunologist, and I am not an expert, but the way I see it is, if you don't hear both sides of a debate, what's going to happen in the future if, say, a mistake was made, but nobody's allowed to point it out? Something could happen that could have a drastic effect, but now you would not be able to legally raise any voice against it. Now, that to me doesn't seem to be a wise world. If we can't listen to both sides of an argument, where are we heading? And then the list will grow, and the next thing you won't be able to discuss is something like climate change, and then you won't be able to discuss, say, 9/11, and a whole long list of things which are branded mad conspiracy theories. That's the problem. It opens with one subject, and where will it go? So, in the Conspiracies book that has just come out, I do raise a lot of concern about this new censorship and where it will go, because, I think this is one of the key issues of our time, is the control of knowledge. And it is something we've taken for granted with the internet, that we've all been able to talk about anything freely. Those days are gone. That's already now ending.
I think what we should be asking ourselves, though, is, should we allow major corporations, once they get to a certain level, to censor us, right? And it's like, I know that's controversial, too, because we have freedom of speech, but there's also, here's a capitalist nation where we have a lot of people that believe in a republic where you can do whatever you want with your business and do it however you want. The thing is, though, on social media, and I'm not pushing for more government, I'm just trying to find a solution here. When we get to using these social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube, and they get so big, it affects society, right? It affects us to a level whatever they do is going to have a major effect. Twitter, you name it, right? And I feel like if somebody can't say what they want to say, then it's even if it's ridiculous, right? I mean, freedom of speech doesn't protect what's popular. It's meant to protect stuff that's not popular. But now, if it's not popular, it makes you uncomfortable or gives you the willies or something, you can't air it. And I don't know how we're going to fix this because we're all so internet and social media dependent now.
I mean, the only other way that it could change, and there's been a slight move towards this, is for new platforms to be created that are not run by the big corporate forces. But the problem is, of course, they just don't have the money to compete on the same level. But nonetheless, that could be built up. If networks of alternative thinkers could grow this and give themselves a presence that can't be challenged, maybe we'll get somewhere. I mean, we have search engines like DuckDuckGo, and there's others that, you know, do not have the same levels of surveillance that the big ones do, for instance. So there is already a move towards that. But the danger will be when you get legislation that tries to stop these things. And that's kind of what we're seeing, because there are so many companies now being threatened with, you know, legal action if they allow certain material to be distributed. As much as it being a conspiracy, these companies are trying to protect themselves. So what they do is to, you know, avoid any risk of censure. They're taking down stuff just to say, well, because we don't want to be prosecuted, not necessarily because they are also working for the evil ruling elite, although that can, I think, also be the case. So that sort of pressure only has to be applied more and more, and it will get very hard for any company to put this stuff out there. But nonetheless, perhaps if enough people stand up and we get alternative platforms that can be financially independent from these other ones, that will grow. But at the moment, of course, most people, they're going to go to Google, they're going to go to Facebook, they're going to do all the big stuff first. So we need, therefore, to spread knowledge of some of the other platforms that are slowly appearing. And then maybe this knowledge will be protected. We can only hope.
Yeah, I hope. I agree with you too, because it needs to be protected. Look, it isn't all popular, and sometimes it's hard to swallow some things when people talk about it. I hear it myself and I cringe, but we got to take our first break. Some of it I cringe, but some of it does make me wonder. We'll be right back with author and speaker Andy Thomas. Stay with us. More coming up.
Of your mind, it's Light in the Void with Joe Root.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, the Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm, call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Root, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right, construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheTea.com.
Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Get the Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health naturally. Again, log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at GetTheTea.com.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
Welcome back. Andy Thomas, our guest tonight on Lighting the Void. Go check out his website, truthagenda.org. Also, the new book, Conspiracies, the Facts, the Theories, the Evidence, a fully revised new edition by our guest tonight, Andy Thomas. And I did, Andy, actually get to look at one of your speeches that you did on YouTube. And, man, you know what, you've done this before. You're good at speaking. It kept me compelled the whole time. But it does make me wonder, like, how effective has your work been, you think? Do you think that you're actually changing the game a little bit and your area on YouTube? Because we just got through talking about the problems, right? And I think that you're part of the solution. But do you feel like you're doing enough? Does it feel enough to you, honestly? Or does it frustrate you sometimes?
I don't think that anybody can ever really do as much as is needed, probably, to get this material out there. But you have to just drip feed it. I mean, the way I feel about it, it's like the classic story, which I think is attributed to Isaac Asimov, but allegedly he was walking along a beach one night and there was a man throwing starfish back into the sea. And Asimov said to him, "Why are you doing that? You know, you're never going to make a difference just by throwing a few of these back into the sea." But the guy held up a starfish and said, "Yeah, but it makes a difference to this one." And that's a good analogy. And the way I feel it is that if you can just reach out to even a few individuals, they will have a domino effect on others. You know, we're unlikely to find ourselves on the mainstream news anytime soon, but every person you can share this kind of knowledge with is somebody that hopefully is changed by it. And I give a lot of lectures, and a lot of the groups that I speak to, they're not necessarily alternatives. I'm very lucky. I'm on a circuit here where I get to speak to all kinds of people, and they're new to this. And the way I see it is if you've got 60, 70 people in front of you, well, that's 60 or 70 people more who would not have come across this kind of material without you being there. And what you hope is somewhere down the line, the ripples go out. It will change enough that perhaps somewhere, and you'll never know, you'll never verify it, somewhere down the line, the human race will have been nudged ever so slightly in a direction of understanding the bigger picture. And because the way I feel, and I'm sure you feel the same, is that when I put the mainstream media on, and you just know that they are not representing certain areas correctly,
right? Yeah, for sure.
It makes me feel a sense of injustice. And I feel cross about it. So rather than just sitting there fuming and getting angry, if I can just balance that in some way, and of course with the books that I've written over the years, and you know, that gives me at least a feeling of, right, well, there's an opportunity there for somebody to find it, and that's important because, as we've already established in this conversation, getting those avenues out there is getting harder. But every little thing, every single person that you can reach, it is something rather than nothing. And I think that's where we have to kind of encourage ourselves and all the people listening to this show here. You know, if this nudges one person to look again at the world they're living in and the false information that they're generally given by the mainstream, well, good. You know, that in itself, we hope, will achieve something somewhere.
Yeah, and I also want to say, too, that this show, we talk about the esoteric quite a bit here, and I'm trying to make it a point, and I like the way you approach things, is I try to make it a point not to get all hypish about it and try to induce fear and be on the entertainment side of things. But I still, like you say, I don't want my audience burying their head in the sand. I want to discuss these things without the hype of it all. And I think what you're doing is very good, because it doesn't seem, even your speeches, they don't seem like you're just out to hit every deep and dark level of things. You're just wanting people to look at what's really going on here. I think that's what would make the difference, you know.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's like with the Conspiracies book. So an older version came out some years ago, but this is very much revamped, very much in the moment. What I'm trying to do is not scare people, but I'm trying to make these ideas accessible and give a good, balanced view that doesn't just create more polarization. You know, the subtitle of the book is "The Facts, the Theories, the Evidence." What I'm trying to do is to get back to the reasons why people believe this and to strip away those deep levels of fear and the deep levels that, you know, often exist in the conspiracy world of conflict. You get internal conflicts going, and they don't do anybody any good. We all need to agree on certain things that need talking about. And if there are disagreements within that, well, that's fine. But let's be civil about it. Let's try not to constantly be trying to force people to believe in certain things. All we can do is offer these things as truths and say, look, I think this should be looked at. And if you do it with a heaviness, if you do it where you're creating more fear, what I've found anyway is people back off. You're not likely to get that far. And given that fear is one of the problems, that's how we're controlled. The population is controlled by fear all the time, because when we're in fear, we beg for more controls, and then more controls are duly given by the powers that be. So we don't want to fall into that, and it disempowers us. So I try as much as possible not play it down. I'm not trivializing this material, but to keep a level of positivity in there to say, look, these things are going on. We need to be aware of it. We need to balance it where we can. But at the same time, let's keep a sense of we can win here. And that, without being unrealistic, let's go into this with the best attitude we can. Otherwise, you're giving in from the start and you might as well not bother. And,
exactly.
There are sources out there that you come out of it feeling so depressed at the end. What it does is it freezes you into inactivity. So that, to me, doesn't help. So I always try to keep, as much as possible, a level of lightness, I suppose, but not in a way that where I'm playing down, the weight of what's going on. I'm very clear about that. But at the same time, we do not want to be disempowered by holding that knowledge. And there is a balance, and you can strike that balance. And at the end of the day, if you don't shout at people and you don't shake your fist at them to believe this or believe that, you find actually that they are more open to coming to that information, and then they will spread it themselves. Whereas if they see something that's just too dark and nasty, they're not going to go near it, and then they will never have that doorway to it, and that's a shame. So it's all about balance as ever.
Yeah, exactly. I'm totally with you on that. I got a question here on the text-in line, too. It says, does your guest believe that we have become a corporatocracy? If we're still a nation, then our rights are ensured by the Constitution, and I was bringing this up earlier, too, but if we are a corporation, as it seems, then our behavior is guided by company policy, and those are completely different situations. And our listener that texted in has his suspicions that we've become a corporatocracy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question at all that, corporations, companies, they have far too much power over our lives. And, of course, and I'm sure we all know the names here. There are big people out there who've made a lot of money and gained a lot of power through running these companies. And, of course, they become untouchable. And they then have far more influence over governments and parliaments than they ought to. Lobbying is a serious issue. I think we all know ultimately the politicians, they are going to do the bidding of the big companies. They're not really going to do our bidding. And it's always been a problem. It's not a new problem, but certainly it's got bigger. When you look at, this handful of people who've got more money than most of the rest of the world, they are going to be, they're going to be on a level where you can't get near them. And if they snap their fingers, governments are going to jump to their tune. So this is an unfortunate thing. But yes, sadly, I think that is true. I think we do live in that kind of world. And the problem with that is, it comes back to what we were saying earlier, is that creating alternative platforms, it is possible, but getting the same level of exposure for them without the alternative platforms turning into what the other ones did, that's always a difficult balancing act. But I don't think that it shouldn't be attempted. But I definitely agree. And, if you want to know who your politician really works for, find out which companies they've got directorships for, or, they are consultants for. And you find there's normally a long list of big companies in the background that are pulling the strings. And I think it is a sad reality.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. And I don't doubt that. I feel like we have become a corporatocracy for sure. But there are still questions that remain on our minds that really just boggle us to death. And kind of the one thing that I think scares me more than anything is, and I know it probably doesn't scare a lot of people, it's probably not their top 5, but it is mine, is the Kennedy assassination. Like, why have we not gotten down to the bottom of that? It's 2020. We still don't have any, I think they released some new papers on it, but it didn't really tell us much. Something changed then, and I don't think it's been right ever since. Do you still look into that?
I certainly do. If anybody looks at the Conspiracies book, you'll find in there's a long section about JFK. And the reason is because it is iconic. It's sometimes described as the mother of all conspiracy theories, and I'm sure there's other contenders for that these days as well. But nonetheless, it's true. It was the first big event that really, in an age of mainstream media, obviously long pre-internet, but you had the television, the radio, and so forth, where immediately the doubts around what had happened, kind of became clear. And everybody knows the basics here. The main argument is if there was more than one gunman, which is the central accusation here, then who were these other people? Who were they working for? Was it a coup d'etat? And so on. And this is what's never been resolved. But interestingly, you mentioned there that there was a new release of information a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And yet, and I've heard this in a number of places, we're told there was nothing really new, nothing of any value. I don't really agree with that. Because one of the things that it did reveal, for instance, there were minutes of speeches, records of speeches given just a few weeks after the shooting of Kennedy, where it is clear that people knew at the time or had heard that there was more than one gunman. Because some people try to say, well, that's a kind of a modern thing where they've retrospectively tried to say that. But actually, that makes it clear that at the time, the word had already gone round that other people were firing bullets. Okay, so this clearly was known back then as well.
So there were, I don't remember reading about that. But what you're saying is the reports came out of witnesses saying that they did definitely hear multiple shots.
You've got the people at the classic, the grassy knoll. Everybody talks about the grassy knoll at Dealey Plaza. So you've got several people there who claim they heard shots coming from over a wall, which is not where Oswald was. Of course, he was in a school building. But there are claims that people, heard shots coming from near a storm drain. Some claim that one of the drivers, a man called William Greer, might have fired a shot. There's strange movements going on when you look at the film, the famous Zapruder film. Some claim that a security guard's gun accidentally went off in the melee. And there's a lot of people feel that that's a distraction story in itself. But you have the police there. Now, the police had audio recorders on their belts. Now, they record 6 shots being fired, and yet the official report says only 3 shots were fired. So you've got all these anomalies here that make it at the very least clear that, it's not clear. There's something going on here. And from the start, the arguments were getting going. But the strange thing is, the world still seems to think that the lone gunman theory still holds in the official account. But that's actually not true, because in 1979, the US state, it did reinvestigate, and it produced a paper which did conclude, and I quote, that there was a high probability, unquote, of other gunmen being present. But then it left it hanging. It didn't go any further with that. So that actually is the official view, is that, yes, there probably were more gunmen, but, don't worry about that. And the world, I suppose, hasn't. And that the hope always seems to be in the mainstream that something that is obviously a conspiracy of some kind, that it will fade away into history and we'll all stop thinking about it. And in time, a bit like where we are now with JFK, most people will know it probably was a conspiracy, but they'll never worry too much about it and we'll never get to the bottom of it. And you can see this happening with other things like, 9/11, Princess Diana, all these things, which I cover at length in the book. It's almost like, we all know there's something not right, but hopefully we'll all move on and we won't stick our noses in too much. But that's why, actually, you do need to make a noise about these things as soon as you can before it gets buried under the carpet. But JFK, it's never going to go away because there are so many layers of intrigue here and so many holes in the official story that was given at the time that nobody's ever going to trust the authorities anymore on what they say. So, that's where it's at. But then you get to who would have given the orders. And the usual list is, was it the Cubans? Was it the Mafia? Was it the Freemasons? Was it, and so on, this long list. The general view today in the conspiracy world is it was some kind of New World Order necessity. We know that Kennedy wasn't playing the game set down for him. He'd made enemies. He was giving speeches against secret societies, which maybe wasn't such a good idea. There were a lot of people, I think, queuing up to get rid of him because he was clearly not doing what was set down for him. And you've got also the Marilyn Monroe stuff going on. Both John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy had affairs with her. She was a bit of a loose cannon. Many believe she was murdered, of course. There's another conspiracy theory there.
Yeah.
But, maybe they were worried, look, this has all got too tangled. Too many people know too much that might speak out. And it was just easier to remove him. So there we go. And of course, many people have implicated the CIA in doing away with him as well. So there's a long list of people who all would have benefited from it. That is not to say that Oswald didn't fire any of the shots. Some have argued that, but I think most people accept that he did fire some of them. He clearly did have communist sympathies. So, but he may well have.
He even said he was a patsy, like he knew it when it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
He said it. He's like, you don't understand. I mean, can you imagine being in his shoes, right? That when that happened, and I'm just a patsy. Like, you guys don't understand. And then as he's opening his mouth, the mob comes out of nowhere and just shoots him in the gut just to shut him up, right? And then and I've looked into that whole thing too. I think, Jack Ruby's family, I think he was dying of cancer or something. I mean, anybody could have come across to him and said, look, we'll pay you this amount of money. We'll take care of your family. Just do this for us, this kind of thing. Have you looked into that aspect of it too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jack Ruby's a fascinating guy. So he was allowed to give a speech from his jail, after he had shot Oswald. And then I think he started to say things that were not expected of him. And he was dropping very heavy hints that he knew who had really killed Kennedy. And he had also told friends that, yes, although he was an unwell man, that they were injecting him in the jail with strange things every day, and he believed they were trying to kill him. And sure enough, he did die in the cells. But then you've got other people that knew Ruby, and there was a lady called Rose Cherami. Now, she worked in Ruby's rather sleazy nightclub. But before the shooting of Kennedy, a short while before that, she claimed she had overheard Ruby and Oswald together, as if they were friends, in the back room of the club with men she believed to be CIA, discussing the shooting of the president that was due to take place. And Rose Cherami, she went to the police and she told them, look, I've heard this, you've got to stop this parade. And she wasn't listened to, of course, which meant that then when Kennedy was shot, she was in a very compromised position, which might then explain why she was shortly found dead lying by the side of a road, allegedly from a hit-and-run accident. So, there are other people that shine an interesting light on this. And I think there's much more to the relationship between Oswald and Ruby than we know. So then when you look at the long line of people who were witnesses to the shooting at the grassy knoll, things like this, who died in mysteriously early circumstances, it does make you think. It does almost look like witnesses are being taken out. And this is something that's usually a good indication of a conspiracy that needs looking at. And another one which falls into that category, and I know many people are not comfortable to talk about this, but that is 9/11. And several people who witnessed things that challenged the official story, who were there on the day, have also seemingly died in mysterious circumstances or earlier than you might think. And I know there are some people that think they are being taken out by various dubious means. So, yeah, the JFK conspiracy has got so many models for later conspiracies that come, sadly.
You think that stuff is not real, but just a couple of days ago, when talking about conspiracy theories, remember there are real, it's real. Some of this stuff is real. If you go to UFO Seekers on Twitter, they retweeted a tweet from Steve Barrett that says, today a man's family says he went searching for a secret launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. and they only to find his car parked at 39B on the launch pad, and he was found dead 10 days later at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock today, which that was 8 hours ago. That was reported actually a couple of days ago. And Steve Barrett's breaking down the spiraling events that led to this guy's name is Kenny Hutchinson, who went to look for this launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. Now he's dead, and his car was parked on the launch pad on 39B. So, yeah, they're still killing folks, man. And David Paulides, I don't know if you ever looked into him, but Missing 4011, the stuff is staggering, man. It's staggering. If we think that our governments and corporations aren't willing to take us out, we're sadly mistaken. They're doing it all the time to this day, I believe.
I mean, obviously, this is always denied, and people will say, well, it's coincidence. I mean, there's a claim that many people who promote alternative medicine, or are trying to take us out of the normal healthcare system, that many of those people have died in mysterious circumstances. Now, if you go to like a very mainstream site like Snopes.com, that will tell you that that's all rubbish. But, then you look at some of the patterns and you wonder, well, Snopes is there to put us off the scent, of course. I mean, that's not to say it's always wrong, of course not. But certainly when it comes to conspiracy areas, they have a vested interest, of course, in screening things their way. That's something else that is censoring information. Where we have, for instance, Microsoft NewsGuard, which is where if you sort of put that into your phone or your computer, before a news website opens up, it will tell you whether or not it thinks that site is reliable. Now, that, of course, is very dangerous, because how subjective is that? And then you look at the board behind NewsGuard, and you've got ex-CIA people, you've got speech writers for Condoleezza Rice, all the kinds of people that, of course, would never support a conspiracy theory, because many of those conspiracy theories are about them. So that's going to skew things, and this is always the case. The mainstream protects itself, and they have these alleged news filters, but they are biased to the point where you cannot rely on them. So that's always the problem you've got, I'm afraid.
Yeah, for sure. And anytime something that comes out like that, we also have to watch out for whatever the story that's always going to say, well, that story wasn't true, and I can tell you something that came out about this man's story for the launch pad, and then you have to make up your mind what's real and what's not. And we'll talk with Andy about that more right after this. We're at the top of the hour. I'm not lighting the void. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void. Stay with us. Of course, I am lighting the void a little bit.
Your mind, it's Lighting the Void with your host, Joe Roop.
All right, man, this is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
This is Barbara Charlton from Metaphorical Archaeology. If you've ever had a traumatic paranormal experience, the effects of it may stay with you for years. Who do you talk to? You can't go to conventional help. What we do is we use emotional freedom techniques or tapping to actually neutralize the effects of that event. Maybe when you tell the story now, your heart races and your palms get sweaty. You don't even want to think about it because you don't know how to neutralize that. That's what EFT tapping does. It neutralizes those emotions. The circuit that was recorded on is gone. The energy flows freely and you're free of it. And that's what emotional freedom is all about. We offer this as a pro bono service, but this is something that I offer because no one, it seems, is helping people with these experiences. If you'd like to reach me, it's really easy. My cell phone is 214-995-3754. Please leave a message. I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Or you can email me, barb.eft@gmail.com. And EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Reach out to me. It's confidential. This works. You won't believe the results.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Ew.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy and gross. Bugs, I hate bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. I know. I use Orange Guard. Plus, all of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It promotes a healthier planet, and here's a bonus. Orange Guard cleans where it's sprayed. Plus, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard.
You can get Orange Guard at Ace Hardware. And listen, folks, Orange Guard is tougher than bugs, and it's safe to use. Go to orangeguard.com. That's orangeguard.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Have you ever seen an ad or banner which brought you a feeling that someone is reading your mind or even listening to your conversations? Your online data is being used against you. Surfshark is a VPN service that makes online privacy protection easy and attainable. You can use it on as many devices as you'd like simultaneously. Surfshark encrypts all internet traffic sent to and from your devices and ensures that your IP address remains hidden. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Paranormal News. I'm Brad Bernards. A drug molecule invented by artificial intelligence will be used in human trials in a world first for machine learning in medicine. It was created by British startup Exentia and Japanese pharmaceutical firm Sumitomo Dainippon Pharma. Exentia Chief Executive Professor Andrew Hopkins described it as a key milestone in drug discovery.
We actually have been the first company to truly automate drug design. Molecules now can be designed by algorithm, and these are now sort of heading towards the clinic. The first ones, which we believe will be the first molecules, designed with the aid of AI.
The firm is already working on potential drugs for the treatment of cancer and cardiovascular disease by the end of the year. Coronal mass ejections aren't known for being subtle. Each event can fling huge amounts of plasma off the sun and out into the solar system. In November 2018, as seen from Earth and certain spacecraft, the sun seemed to be calm, but it wasn't. The sun was experiencing what scientists call a stealth coronal mass ejection. NASA's Parker Solar Probe was completing its first close pass behind the sun, putting its instruments in a perfect position to see what was happening on November 11th and 12th during this usually cryptic event. Read the news at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Paranormal News.
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
Listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in.
Yeah, right. We got to go back. I'm with you. I'm going to talk to you about that.
777-5631.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Just coming in on the new clock. If you can't tell, we're on this new clock system here, the new show clock. So at the top of the hour, we'll have a little bit longer of a break, and then at the bottom one is the small one there. And that's for syndication purposes, so just bear with me. But we won't be having commercials every 10 minutes like some of the radio shows out there. I won't do it. Even if, they'd have to make me an offer for $10 million. I don't know. I don't want to have a bunch of commercials. That's all I know. But we're here with our author, Andy Thomas, and the book, his new book, you can go check it out, is all about conspiracies. Now, the book that is this a revision of a book that you previously wrote, or is it a brand new title? I don't want to get that wrong, Andy.
So there was originally a book which came out about 7 years ago called Conspiracies. This is very much revamped. All the classic stuff is still in there, but it's been restructured. And of course, in the last 7 years, so much has happened. I mean, the world has changed. We've had Donald Trump, we've had Edward Snowden. There was so much that needed updating. So it's very much a new book. And if anybody is looking for a good starting point to make some kind of sense of all this conspiracy stuff and come out of it, hopefully feeling that you've got more clarity and also are aware of what the real evidence is, not just some of the kind of fringe arguments, then hopefully this is the book for you. It's designed to appeal to not only the people who are already aware of this material and give them a good compendium of it, but it's also designed to make it more accessible to people that maybe don't quite know where to start with all this, because there is a lot of this stuff out there. But yeah, no, the book absolutely, it's brought things up to date. And we talked earlier about censorship and all these things, and a lot of that has only kicked in big time in the last year. So yeah, it's as up to date as it can be, and trying to make people aware of these things that are just so important to keep discussing.
Right. Thank you for that too. I just wanted to be real clear on that. But before the break, I had said something about this guy that ended up dying at the Kennedy Space Center. And another article comes out, and this is something else I want to discuss with you. When we're trying to figure out the truth about something, there's always an article, then another one that comes out that says it's total BS. So like this one came out and said, well, here's the real story. On January 31st, which was like a week before the previous article came out, of 2020, the individual referred failed to obey our security policy officer's direction. So that tells you right there that the Kennedy Space Center is the one that's negating the article. To make a U-turn at gate number 4 and depart the property, he drove south in the northbound lane of the Kennedy Parkway inside the restricted area of KSC at speeds exceeding 80 miles an hour. And then he took a left turn on the Happy Creek Road, turned left onto A Avenue, and after nearly a mile, he crashed through a gate. He turned right on Patrol Road, smashed through another gate, then turned right on Pad B, Bypass Road. The subject eventually crashed into a trailer near the entrance to Pad B. Their police units pursued the guy the whole time, and he was taken into custody, he was issued a bunch of tickets and stuff, transported off the center. His vehicle is not drivable and was towed off center. So here's one article saying the guy's dead. His family found his truck on a launch pad, and here's Kennedy Space Center saying, well, no, this is really what happened, which is totally different, right? It's not even close to the original article that came out. And they're both swearing. Both sides are swearing what's true. Now, how do we figure out what's true here? But even if we went to the investigation, we're only going to get two sides of a story, and we're not going to know what really happened. Well, I think somewhere the truth lies in the middle somewhere. That's what I think.
I think that is often the case. What we have a problem with in the world in general today, but also in the conspiracy world, is polarity. People are pushed absolutely to the polarity where they see anybody that disagrees with them as absolutely the enemy. Now here in the UK, the polarity in the last few years has been people who want to leave the EU, which we now have, and people that want to stay in the EU. That's created incredible divisions, and it leaves no subtlety between. In the States, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, and that gulf between them has now got so big that it's become almost like people firing from trenches at each other. And ultimately, that's not going to get anywhere. So we've got that very much also in the realm of conspiracies. You've got the mainstream saying there are no conspiracies, this is all rubbish. You've got the people in the conspiracy world that no longer believe anything the mainstream tells them. So immediately they hear something in the mainstream, they immediately will presume it's not true. And the trouble with that is, although sometimes that is the case, you can then avoid looking at key evidence. And you can never always, you can never know for certain that the information you're dealing with is accurate. But actually, I think you can more or less get to the general picture. And what you need to do three things, I always think. Number one, look at the mainstream view on something. Find out what's in the mainstream news, CNN, BBC, what are they saying? Look at that, be aware of it, don't immediately deny it. Then go to the extreme that says it's all a conspiracy. Look at the very worst things people are saying, and see how that feels with you, see how that fits with what you've seen in the mainstream. Then go to the other end, the total skeptic view, which says there can't be any conspiracy, whatever. See what they're saying, see how that feels. Actually, if you use your heart and a little bit of wisdom, it does soon become clear where the general truth lies. And actually, I think there is a way of kind of feeling your way through this. You might not absolutely know everything, but you can soon come to a conclusion. And as you say, actually, many things tend to be grey areas. It's not entirely one thing, but it's not entirely the other. But, like we were talking earlier about Kennedy, or there are certain anomalies of 9/11 or whatever. Mm-hmm. There are certain things you can say that's an anomaly, and there's no questioning it. Now, what conclusions you draw from that, of course, that's when the arguments can begin. But we shouldn't get into this thing where just because you have a slight difference of opinion to somebody that you're going to treat them as the enemy. That's one of the problems. That is divide and rule. And we see that a lot. People are controlled, populations are controlled by dividing us. And we need to be very careful not to fall into that. It is possible to disagree with somebody, but still be more or less on the same track. And yet what's happening at the moment is we're all being pushed to polarity. But if you can establish the basic facts of something, at least reasonably enough, where this is more or less what happened, then you can usually begin to get somewhere. But it does involve a bit of work. I mean, I must say, yes, you can't just immediately know something. You need to do a bit of research. But one of the problems of social media is people are encouraged to react very, very quickly to things before they necessarily have the full information. And I always try as much as possible not to overreact to something too soon, and just to sit with something and see what other evidence might come in before I stick an opinion out there, because I think that's one of the problems. And especially now we are in a world where we know we are deceived, we know the authorities don't tell us the truth. There is an assumption that you can start with that any news story you hear must be a lie. It's probably not quite that straightforward, and that's when you have to come back a little bit into the middle. Otherwise, you can go completely mad, and it is hard to know. It's hard to know for certain what the truth is, but you can feel your way through these things. But you do need to be discerning. You need repeating references. Don't just believe what one person has said, because they might be wrong. But if you see the same thing coming through from various different conduits, then I think you can put a picture together that's reasonably reliable. And that's certainly how I try to do it.
Yeah. Well, I wish more people would do it that way, but I can tell you one where the gray area is fairly big, my friend, and that's the extraterrestrial concept, right? That's one is where the gray area gets a little bit wider, I think, because we've had, I don't want to make anybody mad to hear, but we've had some obvious stuff that's happened to where I could easily say that, man, if there was such a thing as disinfo, these guys got to be it. And then again, we've also had other people that don't get taken seriously, that should be getting taken seriously in this field. And I fear that ufology could die from it. It could literally trickle away. I mean, there's always going to be people that want to study the subject, that look at the subject. But as far as that gray area of what's true and what's not, I mean, it's a vast array. I mean, you and I were talking about cattle mutilations and stuff before the show, and that's lumped in there to that too as well. But there's no way of knowing, and I think what we want to do during the election time is we want to say, hey, if we could just get a president that would actually tell us the truth about this, then we'd vote for him, right? They just win the election. But no one ever says, do you really think, even if they come out and tell you what's real about it or not, that you know for a fact that that's the truth. I mean, they'll say anything for votes. So I'm not giving up on the ET thing. I just feel like, man, it's hard to believe anything when people talk about it nowadays, honestly.
Well, in the Conspiracies book, there is a whole chapter here about the extraterrestrial conspiracy theories. Now, there are some people that, could object to that even being in the book, because immediately you start to talk about aliens and UFOs, a lot of people go, wow, that's just mad, isn't it? Because they've been encouraged to think that. That's very interesting. When I give interviews about this kind of thing, as soon as you start to talk about that with a mainstream interviewer, a little chuckle comes into their voice.
Right.
And when you give lectures about this kind of thing, and you show a picture of, say, a classic flying saucer, the audience tends to laugh. And the reason they laugh, and I challenge them with this, is they've been conditioned to laugh. And yet, when you talk to people that have actually seen stuff like this, and of course, I meet an awful lot of people in my travels who will share things with me that they wouldn't necessarily share with other people because they fear the ridicule. I have met so many pilots, military and commercial, soldiers, policemen, qualified professional people who have seen classic flying saucers. And they've given very clear descriptions. And you realize after a while, I would say, if I was to put a vague statistic on it, I would say around 1 in 10 people that I meet has seen a UFO. Now, even if you rule out 2/3 of those as mistaken, planes or whatever, there are some things that you just cannot explain like that. And you look these people in the eye and you realize something genuine's happened to them. They're not making this stuff up. They're not stupid people. These are very sensible, many of them. So that's given me, I have to say, a valuable insight into the reality of it, not what the mainstream feeds. And the mainstream generally, it mocks this stuff. And yet, absolutely, it is clear strange things do fly around. Now, are they extraterrestrial? Are they military? Probably both. Is it a hybrid technology? So all of these things, they've now fallen into this kind of slightly mythological sort of pantheon where we just can't be sure anymore what the big picture is. But you can be pretty sure there is a picture. And there are people in high levels who have broken ranks and have said there are things going on. I mean, if you look at the Disclosure Project, you've got high-ranking people like Colonel Robert Salas, who claims that he was present at the Malmstrom nuclear base in 1967 when an object suddenly appeared over the base and neutralized the nuclear missiles. Now, there's other tales of that going on around the world. That suggests we're dealing with something which has enormous power. And that raises, of course, many interesting sort of issues, let's put it like that. So you've got things like that, but you've also got the Canadian ex-defense minister, Paul Hillier. Now, he's gone on record as saying that the American government is in contact with ETs. Now, that never makes the mainstream news, but that's a high-level person saying that. The Mexican Air Force has said that they do believe UFOs are a real phenomenon. And we have had some noises from, I think last year, the US Navy said it wanted to take UFOs more seriously. We've had some similar things like that here in the UK. But then you don't know whether you're being played with, because I think sometimes this kind of stuff has been deliberately stirred up to sort of muddy the waters. And we know there is military technology out there. Some think talk of UFOs is merely a cover for that. But of course, then others see it the other way around. Talk of military technology as a cover for extraterrestrial interventions. But what you can say is that there is something here. And whether we say that it's alien or not alien, absolutely there are craft that are out there doing things that our conventional craft don't do. They can travel at incredible speeds. They can turn angles in the sky. I have spoken myself to people who've watched this or they've seen it on radar screens. It's real. But knowing absolutely what it all means is difficult when you are faced with authorities that simply won't go public with what they really believe. And yet when people try to use the Freedom of Information Act and things like that to get authorities to release documents about UFOs. When they do release them, it's full of redactions. There's all these big black blocks literally covering up information about a subject that they then tell you doesn't exist. So, but that's where you can be very sure, well, there is something worth discussing. So that much at least we can establish. But until the day there is a big announcement, we are never going to know. And bear in mind, if there was a big announcement that, yep, aliens are here or they're coming, immediately some people would say, what if that's a lie? What if that's just what the government wants us to think? And then you're going to be into a whole other area of conspiracy theory. And there have been claims that there could be a fake alien invasion designed to bring the world together into a one-world government. You've got talk of Project Blue Beam, which is where allegedly three-dimensional sort of images can be created in the sky with laser technology and stuff. So even if you thought you'd heard the big announcement, actually all that's going to do is immediately create new conspiracy theories that this is something being created. And by the way, you'd also get that if the second coming of Christ were to appear in the sky. Immediately, some people are going to go, this is it, the book of Revelation's coming true. Other people are going to go, I think this is a government scam. So whichever way things go, however big it is, there's going to be doubt. And that is absolutely where you're going to have to really see how you feel in your stomach about something. Because already we're in times where it's very hard to know the absolute truth of something. And, you know, if something big were to come in and stir that up, yeah, we could all be faced with really having to look inside our hearts about what we think's going on.
Yeah, and more specifically, I was talking about the super soldier thing. That's a big subject in ufology, and it took years for people to realize that there were a few. Calling them disinfo agents would be incredibly. That's a compliment compared to some of these stories that were being told. You know, speaking at conferences, they created cults with their stuff and still have them today. I mean, some people, when you get that cult mindset, it's very hard to let go of. It's like a religion. You know, you're too invested in it no matter what the evidence shows. And no matter if the evidence shows just how false they are or not, you're just going to keep following them. And I think that it's possible that some of these people might have worked for the government to come in here and stir stuff up to keep us on back from the truth, kind of like To the Stars Academy thing. I still think that's just to push us back, because I feel like we as a society, and this group specifically, have made a lot of headway in ufology, enough to where they have to go, okay, they're really figuring stuff out. What are we going to do? What are we going to do to push them back, right? And that's, well, let's get a bunch of government people involved in this and a few celebrities and give them a few cookies, and that'll be enough that they can chew on for a while so they don't really know what's going on. That's what I think's happening. I got a feeling that's happening. I don't have any proof about it, but it just feels that way with the whole To the Stars stuff, you know.
I mean, I think absolutely that, false information is deliberately released. So we talk about fake news, but that's probably coming from many different directions. And, we've heard of government programs, cognitive infiltration, and all of this. I am sure that false information is deliberately seeded, especially on social media, to muddy the waters so that you're left never really knowing what the truth of something is. That is where, the task in the world of conspiracy research is to really try to discern what might be false information and what at the very least is identifiable as an anomaly. And that's where you have to try to hone it down a bit. Because, I'm very sure we are having our heads played with all the time. And there are forces out there with a lot of power in the world that know how our minds work. They know how easily distracted we can be. And as you said, people can get very fixed on one idea and will defend it to the last, no matter what other evidence comes in. People can be very easily led, therefore, back into polarity. So, I would advise, again, if you can avoid going to polarity, you're less easily controlled. Now, I mean, I've always tried it in my work over the years into conspiracies and also paranormal research, as much as possible to stay in the middle. Now, some people will see that as a weak position, and then, of course, you get attacked from both sides. But to me, if you can stay in the central zone more, you can be open to all ideas. And I try always just to listen to all sides, and I'll have my own views, and I make them very clear about certain things. But if you don't go to the extreme polarity, I find that you're not then getting sucked into other people's agendas. And it comes back to that thing of just don't overreact to something. If you hear something, all right, see how it makes you feel, but just be willing to step back a little bit and not get into the angry zone. But we're so easily encouraged into that these days, and that in itself always makes me suspicious. If somebody wants me to get angry about something, or they're trying to make me hate somebody over there or something over there, I'm immediately questioning as to why now, and I try to avoid that as much as possible.
They're already in a polar position, which doesn't, exactly. They're not being rational. Sure, I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do believe in UFOs. I mean, Tim spotted some of these orangish orbs, the orbs that they don't look alien. I don't know what they are, man. It could be a metaphysical thing, but I've seen them, and I believe in them too. I just don't know if we'll ever get to the truth. But do you think that there are these extra high secretive groups that don't even talk to the president? Come on. I mean, would you tell Donald Trump about this if there was some secret extra governmental group that we don't know about? Do you believe in that?
Well, I mean, look, this is classic X-Files stuff, isn't it? Yes, I do believe that. I don't believe that presidents and prime ministers are the total authority.
No, they don't.
We know that black ops, stuff's going on everywhere. Yeah, there are deeper levels of people who have a much wider knowledge of these things. I am absolutely sure. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the presidents that we've had that have been interested in UFOs, Jimmy Carter was, one example. When it comes to it, they don't do a lot when they're in power about it. Hillary Clinton had claimed in her campaign she was going to try to declassify more UFO information and investigate. Well, I'm sure she would never have got around to it, but of course, that campaign came to nothing in the end. But that's the thing. When you get to power, you might have a lot of big ideas, but it's very likely that the day you become president, somebody sits you down and says, Mr. President or Miss President or whatever, here's what you can say, here's what you can't say. And then you realize that there are powers above you even. Yeah. Just because you're on the top chair doesn't mean you are the font of all knowledge. So, no, absolutely. There are layers of groups out there who know far more than the mainstream politicians do, and they're always there in the background, and we know that there are big groups like the Bilderbergs, the Trilateral Commission, and all of these, and even they're just the surface, but they often exercise more power in the world than parliaments do. So there's always going to be layer upon layer upon layer, and how much the people at the bottom know and how much the people at the top know, well, it's probably not all the same knowledge, and there are people out there who will never let us know what the true big picture is unless that suddenly just bursts forth. But as I said earlier, even if it did, there's always going to be people that doubt. There will always be a level of, is this the truth, no matter what gets announced. So we can talk of disclosure and we can hope of, knowledge of UFOs and ETs being made public, but there will always be people thinking, but this isn't the whole story, is it? So that's the way the world works, I'm afraid.
Right. Yeah, and they might show them that video, like Bill Hicks says, when the president gets in there, they just sit him down and show him a reel of the Kennedy assassination, and when it goes off, they say, any questions? That's probably what they say to him, right? But, yeah, there probably is a level of truth to that. We'll be right back with our author and speaker, Andy Thomas. Tomorrow night on the program, Tobias Lars will be here on Lighting the Void. More coming up. It's midnight 30 here in Arkansas in the Deep South. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop, thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Running low? Hear the Fringe FM anywhere, anytime. Call 701-719-3971, courtesy of TalkStream Live.
We control all the newspapers and the television.
What's going on, ladies? It's me, the Night Stalker from the Night Stalker News. Are you dreading a lonely night on Valentine's Day? Well, have no fear. I'll be on standby for you live on the Fringe FM Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. You can take part in a once-in-a-lifetime chance to bid in a date with me. It's 2020, and apparently e-dates are all the rage right now. Enjoy a virtual, romantic evening with a Night Stalker at your expense. But look at it this way. You get a night with a handsome man on Valentine's Day, and I get a new news studio. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Come bid and be my Valentine. Friday night, February 14th, on Light in the Void. Live, only on the Fringe FM.
This is Reverend John M. Polk, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then, history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves strip bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147 shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Right, me old Chiners. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Light in the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology, and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon, and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of The Fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hey, I'm J.M. DeBoard, and when I want to talk about dreams, I look up my man Joe Root and his show, Lighting the Void.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada. You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Rube. Don't forget you can listen to this show 5 nights a week, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight, right here on the Fringe FM. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. You can call in and speak to our guests or ask any questions. And if you want to bid Friday night, man, it's just the night after tomorrow, Valentine's night, bid on Night Stalker, because we're going to have the Night Stalker news coming up. And he's got to get that new studio. So if you happen to be alone Valentine's night and you want to bid, call in, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. Andy Thomas, our guest tonight from truthagenda.org. We're discussing his new book. A couple of questions in the Fringe FM chat, Andy, is they're asking about the occult. Do you ever look into that? You look into how much the occult is involved with conspiracy as far as, you know, secret societies, our government, the whole New World Order thing. That's a big one, right? That's something I feel I don't agree with on certain aspects of things with people. But then again, I don't know everything about it. But this whole New World Order idea that's involved with the occult, that they've been pretty much mind manipulating us from the beginning because they understand the great mysteries. I mean, what's your opinion on all that?
Well, there's definitely an occult tinge to a number of these groups. I mean, especially if you look at secret society symbolism, there's no question that, you know, these groups, they have an interest in the esoteric. And the esoteric and the occult, some people link them together. Some say it's not necessarily the same thing. But, you know, they are aware of the power of symbol. They are aware of the power of ritual. Now, I'm sure some listeners will be more than aware of, for instance, a group called the Bohemian Club. Now, the Bohemian Club, it's a secret society that was founded in California in the late 1800s, and it soon attracted a world following of, you know, world leaders, prime ministers, presidents, and they would gather in the woods in California once a year and would perform this ritual called the cremation of care. And this still goes on today. And it's a ritual where, you know, some of the players, they dress in robes and they sacrifice the effigy of a child to a giant stone owl. Now, if that does not smack of the occult, I don't know what does. We know it happens. Journalists and people like Alex Jones have broken in. They have filmed it. They have seen it. And indeed, it's not even denied. I mean, Bill Clinton famously joked about this in a speech once. So it's not even denied. We know it's real. But that, to many people, is a worrying thing, that this is what our world leaders are doing. And we know that, you know, Reagan and Kissinger and Nixon and many other more modern leaders, they've all shown up for their ceremonies sooner or later. And also actors and some very high-profile entertainers, Harry Shearer, who does some of the voices of The Simpsons, of course. He has been open that he's been there. He says it's just a pageant, you know, it's just a bit of a laugh, nothing to take seriously. But then, you know, given that we're living in a world where there's a lot of dark claims of paedophile rings and awful stuff, you know, if nothing else, sacrificing the effigy of a child on an altar is in bad taste. And absolutely, a lot of people worry that that's just the tip of the iceberg and that there is a very dark occult agenda. And, you know, we know there are many other groups, Kappa, Phi Beta, Skull and Bones. They very often influence people into high positions, especially the presidents. And, you know, the various secret societies around the world, they all tap into this ancient knowledge and ancient symbolism, which is not necessarily wrong in its own right, but they should be open about why they're doing it. And I think just to say, mind your own business, go away when people ask questions is not fair. Because when our world leaders are dressing in strange robes and worshipping owls, personally, I'd like to know about that. And they should speak more openly about it. And the fact that they don't will only create more suspicion that there is a much darker agenda going on.
Yeah, think about it, man. Like, it's a little too obvious, right? The leaders of the world and the biggest corporations and the politicians are all going to the woods to do some kind of ritual. And it's perfectly normal. They do it every year. I mean, that alone ought to tell you something. It's more than just a good old boy system for sure. But, you know, what I got a problem with is I think, and maybe you disagree with me on this, and that's totally fine, we could have a debate about it. But there does need to be some type of evolution on this planet. I mean, in the East, we still have people that are getting stoned to death for witchcraft, buried up to their waist and stoned to death. Over here, I do believe we are in a corporatocracy, and if you've got groups like Antifa that like to sucker punch people just because they don't believe what they believe in certain states. And yet, when you read any materials by the Masons or Rosicrucians, a lot of their material is just based on trying to create a new society on morals, ethics, and what ancient Egypt was all about. It's actually quite beautiful to me, but then again, you could see how it could easily slip into something a little bit darker, like the Illuminati, the Adam Weishaupt stuff that really did happen. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that ancient knowledge is inherently a bad thing, but it's like anything. It's how you use it. Symbols from the deep past are still used to denote power today. And I mean, if anybody doubts that, just look at the Washington Monument. Mm-hmm. It's a whacking great stone needle, which is emulating the Egyptian needles. And pyramids, I mean, that's another symbol from the deep past that we still use to denote power today. I mean, interestingly, here in Britain, at the heart of our financial centre, we have a building called Canary Wharf Tower. And on the top is a big glass pyramid. Now, it is said, and I haven't been up there and measured it, but it is said that if you imagine extending the corners of the pyramid down and imagine those lines then meeting the ground, that then gives you the exact dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, that cannot be an accident, right? If that is true, that cannot be anything more than deliberate. So either that's an in-joke on the part of the architects, or again, they're linking modern power with ancient power. And the way various buildings are laid out, the way various cities are laid out, they often do have some level of occult symbolism, especially cities like London, Paris, and I'm sure Washington, because the people that believe that symbolism matters and it carries power, they are going to weave this in, knowing that most people in the public will never think about it. And yet, if stuff carries power inherently, it doesn't matter. It's doing there what they think it's there to do. So this kind of stuff does go on. It's not inherently wrong, but if it's being misused and if it's being in some way used to mislead the public, then I think that's where it crosses into deeper, darker stuff. And I mean, just to touch on something you said there, look, yeah, you're absolutely right. The world is full of beliefs that really do need looking at again when it comes to beliefs that lead people to kill. I don't see any justification for these. And yet, at the same time, we do need to recognize that we're still evolving. We've come a long way. I mean, if you read the work of Steven Pinker, who's a philosopher and a psychologist who keeps pointing out, actually, the world is much better than it used to be, no matter what you might think. We are on a trajectory of evolution. Some countries are going faster than others. I mean, here in England, we used to hang, draw and quarter people only 400 years ago. We did terrible things. Now we wouldn't do that now. There has been a level of enlightenment. It gradually moves forward, and yet still we see tales of atrocities going on. Maybe one day we'll get to the point where everybody realizes this isn't the way to go. But what worries some people in the conspiracy world is that you have people in high positions of authority that seem to be trying to keep it all to themselves. And some of the deeper, darker stuff that they're getting up to doesn't seem to be on that trajectory of positive evolution. It's like they're trying to hold ancient ways to give them power in a way that in some way they must feel gives them, an advantage. And I think that's where it becomes problematic. Not that keeping ancient knowledge is inherently bad, but that it's how you use it, like anything. So, right. There is some hope. You look around the world and, many of us going in the right direction, but it would be very nice if our world leaders started to do that as well.
Yeah, that's what it was for. If you read old Masonic texts like from Massey and really get into it, like read it. Most of the people that I hear when they talk about Freemasons and how they're evil and they're worshiping Satan and Lucifer and all this other stuff and Baal, they don't even understand that pastime. And the pagan, they don't understand any of the theology, period. They don't read it, they don't study, they don't know that most of our stuff comes from paganism. I mean, we developed a Christian society here, number one, but we still built our war machine and based on, the Pentagon, which is a shape or a geometrical shape that corresponds with the sphere of Geburah on the tree of life, which all of Western occultism is about, which corresponds with Mars, the planet of war. So they pretty much invoked the power of war when they erected the building. Now, I mean, if you were to build a country and you wanted to make sure that it lasted and you believed in that kind of stuff, wouldn't you do that? I would do it. But then again, it looks evil to some people. So I can understand it too. But most of these people don't do their homework. That's not to say, though, that it hasn't been corrupted. But just about everything's been corrupted. Just about everything that we're involved with like that, it's been corrupted. The church, free secret societies, corporations. It's really a matter of I think it's really a matter of principalities and powers, like evil men versus good men. That's what I think, Andy.
I think it's the eternal struggle. I mean, the Star Wars movies, they sum it up really. There is a force, and it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. There are powers, I think, that do exist, and it's how you use them. Exactly. And there are secret societies in the world. I think some of them are harmless. Many Freemasons are very nice people that like a nice dinner and a few friends, But then there are ones that I think we do need to know more, the Bohemian Club being one of them. And of course, the ones that probably really matter, that are up to the really dark stuff, you probably will never hear about, because that's a real secret society where you don't get wind of it. But it's how you use it. If there's a positive intent to bring mankind to a better place, and you're not doing that by treading on others to do it, then I think it can probably be justified. But sadly, what we see again and again is an abuse of this power, and an abuse of a belief in this power. Whether these symbols and signs that they surround themselves with really give them power, or whether they just feel they do, well, we can't say for sure. But the fact that they feel it gives them power, it will make them more powerful. And we see the symbolism in advertising. We see secret society symbolism all over the place on television. And I think that the signs and the symbols are seeded subliminally all the time. Interestingly, when we had the Olympics in London in the year 2012, a lot of people thought what was very interesting was the mascots that we chose, these two rather strange creatures with one eye and a pyramid sort of shaped body, were of course very like the Eye of Providence, the Great Seal of America on the back of the dollar bill. And even some of the lighting gantries, these triangular things on the London Stadium, followed the same proportions as the Eye of Providence. And many felt that was really making a point. There are many ancient prophecies that the year 2012 was going to be the beginning of a crucial new time of upheaval and transformation for the world. And you can be sure that the powers that be are very aware of all that kind of knowledge. And some believe that, knowing that everybody would be watching the television in 2012 for the Olympics, that they seeded their signs and their symbols so that subliminally we got the message as to who was really in charge. And I think that goes on a lot. Record covers, the music industry, the film industry, you see certain symbols, you see the eye over the pyramid all the time, albeit subtly, and there are people out there trying to point this out to us, and you realize that we are surrounded actually continually by occult material. Now, whether you think it's dark occult or good occult is another matter, but he does surround us, and it's just the way the world works. And you're right, it goes back to, of course, very ancient times.
And what's funny about that too is that you're so right about that. When I was on Clyde Lewis's show on Ground Zero, we were talking about that. We were talking about sigil magic and how it works, how symbols work to the subconscious and all of that. And a guy called into the show and he said, well, that's ridiculous. He said, it has nothing to do with magic or anything like that. They don't put symbols on stuff. And he's just in total denial. It was unbelievable to me how in denial he was. And, I said on the show, I said, look, why don't you take a dollar bill out of the back of your pocket and tell me there's not symbols on the back of it all over that. They put symbols all over it. And this is what runs our society. It runs us. It runs everything, that money. And it's got some of the largest and most powerful occult symbols on it ever. And they just don't want to believe it. I think they have an emotional attachment to their own realities sometimes. It's a matter of cognitive dysfunction, I think, where people get so invested in what they believe that they can't realize that they might be wrong. I'm sure you run into that quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, it might be the case that some people that use these symbols don't actually know what they're doing.
That's
that
true
they
too,
pass
yeah.
them on, they repeat them, and they don't actually know what they really mean. But of course, that's the genius of the original sort of intent behind the symbol, which is that they get sort of like released throughout society around the world, and that people will repeat that symbolism and use it, not actually knowing what it ultimately represents. But if you do believe the symbols carry power, even if somebody who's used that symbol doesn't know what they were doing, the power perhaps might still carry on. But no, there are people who absolutely think that's complete baloney. Absolutely, there's no occult influence whatsoever. Well, that's fine. Everybody's entitled to a view. But to me, it seems a little bit beyond coincidence just how often you see certain signs and symbols. And I mean, like there's a researcher called Mark Devlin who's done a lot of work into looking at the music business, and certain symbols. The monarch butterfly is one that keeps appearing on album covers and in advertising. And there's a thing where you get people, they cover one eye, so they put a hand over one eye. This is a recurring symbol, which of course then taps into the eye over the pyramid, and you can link that with other things. And it does seem to be beyond coincidence. Now, again, whether when a pop star sticks a hand over their eye, they know what they're doing, or they're just doing it because they think it's a bit of fun, or they make the devil heavy metal sign with their fingers just because they think it's a bit of fun, but don't realize that actually these things may carry power. Well, that's another matter, but it is pretty rife, and this stuff is out there. And certainly for those that do believe that there is some kind of agenda going on here, they certainly will find some evidence to support that.
Yeah, well, I just don't think magic is something, and the occult is something that a lot of people don't believe in because it doesn't work. And I don't want to get into an occult conversation with you here, but I'm just saying it doesn't work the way people think it does. Everything looks like a coincidence. It happens as a coincidence, right? And you'll never know. That's just how it works. Only way you're going to know this stuff is real is by journaling, or someone like you that's doing deep investigative work. You start to see patterns and things. And I wanted to talk to you about this last thing as we move through the show here, and to the second part is the biggest conspiracy that I've listened to that kind of freaks me out. And I talked to a friend of mine, Roger Landry from the Liberty Beacon, other people that are telling us about 5G, what they're really planning on doing with this stuff, the chemtrails, the metal particles in the air. He would bring up facts to me like, Monsanto has a patent on a seed that actually grows in aluminum. They put this patent out way before 5G rolled out. It's almost like I couldn't believe it when I heard it. And their whole conspiracy theory here is, because that's what it is right now, is that they're putting aluminum particles all over the place, which we know that they are now. And once they get this 5G rolled out, which is beyond too powerful, we don't even need it. A lot of scientists have looked at this and said it's kind of redundant, unless you wanted to create a big microwave, so to speak, where you could pretty much tap into anybody or use certain types of weapons that were focused and things like that. Now that sounds completely ridiculous, doesn't it? It sounds nuts. But every fact that I've looked at as far as Monsanto, the science behind 5G, chemtrails, it all kind of adds up to me. And I don't know. I don't know what to think about it now. Have you looked into that at all?
I mean, look, I definitely think that there are certain technologies currently being deployed against us that, whether knowingly or unknowingly, are, I suspect, going to have a bad effect. And some, of course, do believe it is knowingly. I mean, if you take 5G, there's a lot of concerns about the health effects of those transmissions. And the difference between 5G and the previous phone systems, which in themselves create electromagnetic fields that we know are not good for us. But where 5G is a little bit different is it will mean many more transmitters. They will be in much closer proximity. And, of course, now we have this program, and it's already begun. This is not a fiction. This is actually happening, where they are launching satellites into orbit, which will be beaming down broadband and 5G, abilities all around the world, everywhere. Now, if you believe you are electromagnetically sensitive, as some do, there will now be no escape from that. And many believe that this is going to have a profoundly bad effect on the human race. And the plan, and this is the official figure, by the way, is to get 42,000 satellites in orbit doing this. Now, that's very worrying. Because then when you read the works of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was, of course, a key U.S. political hawk for many years. Now, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard some years ago. And one of the very things that he actually discusses is that we ought to have a ring of satellites around the world beaming down waves that interfere with human brain waves and keep us docile and control us. Now, you can only hope that the people putting these satellites up have not read Brzezinski's book, because many feel that this is a system that could be massively open to abuse. So, yeah, absolutely. You've got that. You've got the concerns about the chemicals going into the atmosphere. The chemtrails mystery, that's a controversial one. Some people believe that you couldn't have such a program of chemical spraying on such a level without somebody having given the game away by now. But whichever way you look at it, nonetheless, chemicals are going into the atmosphere that are not going to have a good effect on us. So we have technologies now being deployed, which we are being used as guinea pigs. There's no question about that. And they might turn out to be extremely harmful. And we're all surrounded now by an electromagnetic soup of signals, and there is simply no way of knowing for sure what that's going to do in the long run. And dangers from it are played down by the manufacturers of these things. They know there is report after report about the dangers of everything from broadband to your standard mobile phone, and yet they don't do anything because they're making a lot of money, and we don't do anything because it's all very convenient to use it. But it could easily be used to change the way our brains work. Our bodies could suffer as a result, and there is a lot of concern about this. But getting that raised in the mainstream, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, that's right. You're totally right. I'm glad that you looked into that. I want to expound on that just a little bit further. We're at the top of the hour, and for all of you occultists out there, you also know that we are in the hour of Mars right now. We'll be right back. More Lighting the Void coming up. Stay with us.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Night is young, so turn up the heat with your host, Joe Root, on Lighting the Void on The Fringe FM.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from wakingcanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to wakingcanvas.com today. That's wakingcanvas.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
You know, stress is at an all-time high, and all of us could use a little bit of stress relief. That's why I want to talk to you about Soothe. Now, this is an app you can download on your phone. They have a massage therapist that arrives with a massage table, sheets, lotion, oils, and music, and you're in charge. You can book in seconds and schedule at 8 a.m. to midnight. Massage 7 days a week, anytime it's available. There's a 60-minute arrival period. A vetted background-checked massage therapist will come to you in as little as an hour. All of the therapists are vetted by industry veterans that ensure a compassionate, healing touch. So maybe you're a little stressed and you need to feel spoiled. Well, there's no better way to do that than relax at your own home and not have to deal with the outside world with Soothe. Right now, you can get $10 off your first massage by putting in the code word FRINGE10 at checkout. That's www.soothe.com or download the Soothe app and put in the code word FRINGE10.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now, this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi, this is David Oman with HouseAtTheEndOfTheDrive.com. You're listening to KTOK, The Fringe FM.
And welcome back. You are listening to Lighting the Void with your host, Joseph Roop.
This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie. A slab of ice at least 40 meters high and weighing thousands of tons toppled from the William Glacier. Chief Officer Simon Wallace describes the incident.
So to say you've got bits of it moving this way, the whole front then moved off to the right. And then it just started another cascade further and further and further down the glacier, at which point we were already turning around to make our way out into deeper water because we just really weren't sure exactly how much more of it was going to collapse. But the whole face of the glacier, as you're looking at it now, is a completely different vista to what it was 2 days ago.
The William Glacier has retreated almost a mile in 20 years and is one of 3 areas currently being studied by scientists as part of a joint UK-Chile iceberg expedition. A massive star system known as XMM 2599 existed 12 billion years ago when the universe was only 1.8 billion years old, reports SciTech Daily. However, researchers at the University of California in Riverside are studying how the ultramassive galaxy could suddenly die. Even with its short lifespan, the star system was immensely productive and created a mass of more than 3 billion suns before it was 2 billion years old, according to the study's lead author, Ben Forrest. To put it in perspective, our Milky Way produces 1 star a year. A clustering of great white sharks off the Carolinas coast is growing more pronounced, based on satellite tracking data shared Saturday on social media. 8 tagged great white sharks are closely grouped together along the border of North and South Carolina. Researchers began noticing a convergence of great white sharks off the Carolinas in late January. The sharks are exhibiting a clear preference for the same spot off Southport near Wilmington, the data shows. Research says the tagged sharks are ranging in size from 8 feet to 13 feet, and they represent a small sampling, meaning the waters could be full of great white sharks. Experts have not offered a clear explanation for why this is happening off the Carolinas, though researchers believe the sharks could have been driven north by warmer waters in Florida. A UFO enthusiast in England who goes by the pseudonym of Isaac Coy is transcribing archives of UFO-focused shows. He posted his project to AboveTopSecret.com's discussion forum, complete with a table of contents for shows and videos. Coy said he used a combination of publicly available transcription software tools to create a system that compiles searchable transcripts of hundreds of audio recordings. Though the transcriptions aren't perfect, they do include timestamps and keywords so users can quickly pinpoint topics within specific episodes. This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Truthagenda.org is the website you want to go to with our guest tonight, Andy Thomas. Tomorrow night, Tobias Lars will be on the program, and then Friday night again, we'll have open lines. Our subscription service will be out soon enough after we get through updating this station for all of some of the shows that we don't actually produce, that don't get in the archives, but 99% of our shows are going to be in the archives. But open lines, some of the extra stuff, we're going to have some really cool stuff for the subscription service, and if you already donate to the program, we are going to be switching you to that subscription. So we already got your emails and stuff when you donate, and we would love to keep getting those donations. If you go to lightingthevoid.com, you can grab a donation. If you grab a shirt or a hat, which a lot of you have, please send in your pictures so we can add it to the Void Walker board that's going to be on the website soon. All right, so before the break, I was talking to you with Andy about the new 5G, the microwave thing, but I didn't really get into the energy weapons. And this is the energy weapons was the thing that I didn't really I was like, come on, man, they got these energy weapons like Dr. Evil off of Austin Power, so to speak, a big laser or whatever, but they are testing those things. And so if you can imagine your body being full of all these particles that we know that they're letting go of, metal particles, it wouldn't take much in a 5G atmosphere to focus on somebody and pretty much drop them. You know, I know that sounds insane, but it's not that crazy. It's not that off. It's not that, it's capable. It could happen is what I'm saying. They could do it. If they're already not doing, they could be doing it already. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's certainly equipment which is out there around the world, which we don't fully know what it does. I mean, there's been a lot of concern over the last couple of decades about what's called the HARP project. That's HARP AA. And it began as a U.S. military communications exercise, although they now say they've sold it on to become a civilian exercise. But nonetheless, they're going to be somewhere there in the background. And these are kind of big complexes of transmitters, which were originally designed to be able to send signals to submarines and stuff without using satellites. You could bounce a signal off the ionosphere. However, if you look at actually what that technology entails and what it's capable of, it could easily be used for weather control and changing various things about the environment. It could also be changed or used for mind control. And that then taps into what you're saying. If we're in an environment where a lot more aluminium has been spread and we've all got this stuff inside of us, of course, we are walking antenna. And it would therefore become a lot easier to send out signals that could potentially not do us a lot of good. And these bases for HARP, I mean, they've gone up in different places around the world, and we don't really know what for. So this is absolutely always going to create conspiracy theories, and I talk about this in the book, about how this technology could be used. And, you know, before the break, we were mentioning there, you know, it was Zbigniew Brzezinski and his proposal of satellites around the world beaming down things that interfere with human brainwaves. The point we need to make about Brzezinski was that this man was really powerful for many years. He was around in the Bush years in the background. He was one of the big sort of sponsors behind the Obama years. And so he had real influence. And when you read his book, which, by the way, you can easily order off of Amazon, he's very open. He's very upfront that, you know, America should basically run the world by any means necessary. And he even gives the science for how this kind of mind control should work. He gives you the names of people who've said they're more than happy to implement it. And here we are now seeing this very infrastructure that could implement those kinds of things appearing around us in the world. And, you know, again, we don't want to get into the fear thing too much here. Maybe it could be used against us. Maybe it won't be. But there should be more open discussion of what's happening, because technology is going out there without us being asked about it. And to me, the fact that you've got all these thousands of satellites beaming stuff down that we've never asked for, we've never given our consent for, and it seems to be happening all around the world without any individual governments having a say in it, that to me is a worrying situation. And certainly, given the minds that we are dealing with, you couldn't put it past them that they wouldn't try and use this to control populations in some way.
I don't put it past any of them. The what I call it is like the rich mad scientist syndrome, where they got a lot of money, they got a lot of power, and they want to try new things. And when people get to this type of power, you know as well as I do, they're like, well, I can pretty much buy or do anything I want, and humans become, you know, a form of currency to some of these people at certain points. It sounds like a villain in a comic book, but we would say, and we'd like to think, that humans would never do that, right? They would never do that to people. But you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to have that kind of power where you can do anything. I could see a brain slipping very easily into megalomania when you get that kind of power. I mean, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, in the book, I trace the patterns throughout history of where very powerful people have managed to justify agendas, which, you know, most people would recoil in horror from. But it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, the human mind can justify something, and they can take out hundreds, sometimes thousands of people all in one go and still think that this is justified for the good of humanity at the end of the day. And I also show in the book how patterns of belief in conspiracy and the belief that authorities are manipulating us, it goes back to ancient times. So it's not new, the way that people can get that level of power and misuse it. But of course, the technology that's now come along to support that, that's where it does get more problematic. So yeah, we're living in an age now where, you know, it's easy to have power over people. Now, if you want the proof of that, you've only got to look at how many people are glued to their phones. Mm-hmm. You know, most people are walking around now, they're barely talking to the people around them. They're switched into technology. So it would be very easy to use that technology against us. And one thing that I've added into the book now is about transhumanism and the concerns about when technology and biology begin to blend, as they already are, and we do wind up with chips inside us and brain chips that can feed images into your brain and all of this. Where is the protection going to be? Because that's going to make us very vulnerable at the deepest level to an abuse of that technology. I mean, one example of that is how, for instance, the mainstream sort of news outlets have managed to kind of proliferate. And Wikipedia, I mean, I'm not saying Wikipedia is wrong, but it is often written by people with one opinion. And yet, when most people today look something up, where do they go? 9 times out of 10, they go to Wikipedia. And that's now become the truth in some people's minds, even though, especially when it comes to alternative realms, it's very questionable. It's clearly written by people who are not open to that. Or, you know, there is a debunking tone. And that means, therefore, when we instantly are just getting downloads of information from these kind of very mainstream electronic platforms, which will just in the end get beamed directly into your brain, that is effectively mind control. And when the other options are gone, when the alternative voices are silenced, it's going to be very, very easy to control people. And then, you know, we do become sort of blended. We almost become robotic. I'm not saying that this should happen anytime soon, but I think the long-time trajectory, that is where we're probably heading. And we need to go into this kind of world with true consciousness. And again, we need to speak openly about our concerns about how it could be misused. Because if we don't speak up now at this stage in history, then we could stumble into a world where we're very easily controllable. And the technology certainly is falling into place now, which will enable this to happen. So we need to just be very conscious of where we're going. There are gifts to that technology as well. I'm not a Luddite. There's many wonderful things that will come with that world, but equally there are nightmares that come with it as well, and we need to head them off and be aware of what they are.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, man. You got a way with words. You got a way of explaining this that just really, really picks my mind. You're saying exactly what I believe. It's just that I don't want to live in a world where we have to wear a mask, put on some type of radiation suit to go outside. And I know it, I just see that coming, man, like Fallout, the video game, if anybody's played it, where you go outside, you got to wear a mask, you got to put on a radioactive suit, and you have to use ham radio because all of your rights have been pretty much stripped away. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like, well, you're giving into fear. But if you slowly pick away at a nest, and that nest being freedom, it falls out, right? That's what happens. And I think as long as they keep us glued to the internet and technology, that's where they're going to get us. We have to get back to where we're not dependent upon these things. I've got a text in about this that from the text line 602 area code wants to know if you think, Andy, about what do you think about the new brain chip, the Neuralink chip? Have you looked into that, about how they're talking about uploading faster technology into your brain where you have pretty much Google in your brain?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, the technology exists. I mean, already, I mean, in the world of medical research, we are seeing that, you know, they've now learned that you can make the brain operate certain machinery. And again, that could be fantastic if you are disabled and you can then have artificial limbs that your brain is working. That is all a marvelous thing. But equally, it means that can work two ways. Yeah. When the day comes when we are completely interlocked permanently with a kind of a brain internet, if you like, you don't even need your phone, it's just coming straight into your head. There's kind of no defense. You can't put the phone down. It's going to be there all the time. And that would be very, very open to abuse. And I do think that is a genuine concern. So this technology is being developed. This is not science fiction. And again, I mean, it's a strange thing. So if I talk about this at a lecture and you talk about microchipping the population, which is something that, you know, people like David Icke was talking about 25 years ago and he got laughed at for it, but it is now coming true. But people still laugh because they don't see this coming towards them. They think this is just a kind of a jokey thing. And you say, no, it isn't. This is actually happening. I mean, people in Sweden especially, I don't know why, but Sweden is very open to this interface between biology and technology. There are people queuing up to get their chip now, their microchip, which is an ID tool, first and foremost. They seem to have been sold that this is a good thing for society. Many companies now around the world, you won't get into the building to where you work unless you've got a chip embedded in you. And that raises enormous concerns because not only is it, arguably the greatest surveillance tool ever, but the problem comes also with when that implant means that you need one to go shopping, get on public transport, or do anything to function in society. What happens if you do get a fascistic regime come into power and say they decide they don't like your political views, and one day you find you've been deleted off the system And actually, when you go to get on a train or a bus, you can't get on. It doesn't work. You can't buy anything. Suddenly, you've become a non-person. It would be a very easy way to control people. And yet we're stumbling into this world without any real fail-safes. Now, everybody says, of course we wouldn't do that. But, the human history shows that things do get abused. We do not live in a society governed by angels, not yet. And all the time that we're not in that society, we need to be really cautious with how much we give in here. And already we're so psychologically slave to our technology. Studies have shown now that younger people who've grown up with digital technology like phones, if you take their phone away from them for even 30 minutes, they're going into withdrawal symptoms. They can't cope. Well, that's a very good way to control people. And also raises very interesting questions about what will happen if we get a massive solar flare one day and all that technology goes down for several months. There's going to be a massive psychological shock there. So that is something else we need to prepare for, because it's very likely that one day that's going to happen.
Everybody's going to go into withdrawals, but they'll get over it. They'll get over it to keep it away from them long enough, right? We need to do it. Think of what if we did that, Andy?
That's why we need the balance. We need to be aware that technology is lovely, but don't slave yourself to it. Keep a bit of you that is not reliant on technology, because that might not always serve you well.
If the Board of Health and the government was really concerned with our health, they would make some kind of law like no phone days. They shut everything down. Go out in nature or something. They don't. People think. And I don't want to get political here, but I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever. Your government doesn't care about you as much as you think they do. Now, there are people in government that I know that work in government and local governments specifically that do care about you, and they really are trying to do things. But you'll find that they're in a fight for their life, and eventually they give up when they get older because they realize this is all about that gold. It's all about the money. And, I'm totally with you on that. I took the phone away from my son just for 2 days, and he was miserable, man. Miserable. It scared me, actually. Frankly, it scared me, because when I was a kid, when we talked on the phone, it was a special thing. We just didn't have one in our pocket all the time. And when you talk to a girl on the phone, it was a big deal because everybody else in the house needed to use the phone. But now everybody's got one. And they could program us pretty easily with that. They already are. Come on, let's be real here. Let's be real about it.
Yeah, we are, in a way, we're at a very interesting moment in history. And this will not happen again in the same way, I don't believe, where we are on the cusp. People like, you and I, we can remember the pre-digital world. And yet now we're getting generations coming through that can't remember anything but the digital world. They've grown up with the internet. They can't believe we never had it before. I grew up in a time when I can still remember a horse and cart coming through the streets of my local town.
Oh, that's cool.
That was a sight you could have seen for thousands of years before. It hadn't changed, essentially. Now we're in a world of technology that nobody could have imagined in previous times. It's changed everything. It's changing the way our minds work. Our brains, there's a lot of evidence, our brains are changing to evolve to that. So the people that have a memory of the pre-digital world, they need to keep that alive, to give a few just useful warnings to the people that have stumbled into the digital world who don't realize what they might have lost. They've gained things, and I'm not anti-technology. There are gains to it. There's marvelous things the technology does, but also there are dangers, and there is a loss, and there is certainly a loss of personal interaction. We do not communicate in the same way we do. Children are being given computers and phones from the earliest years. You're seeing prams. You're seeing prams with an iPad sitting on it. And the children are not getting the interaction with their mothers or with their parents that they used to get. They're being slave to technology immediately, and that is surely going to have a detrimental effect on the human soul, never mind the human brain. Now, we need to be aware that this is happening, because in just another couple of decades' time, no one's really going to remember what life was like before. That will seem like a distant dream, and they won't know what they've lost. So we are certainly entering a realm of risk of becoming very robotic, but we need to be aware that that could be used against us, and we need to be very careful that we don't allow that to happen.
Well, you know as well as I do, in ways it already is, right? And when I say it is, I don't mean militarily, not yet, but it's definitely done that way with artificial intelligence. I can't tell you how many people say, man, I was talking about something and it showed up on my screen. Usually when people told me that, I would say, yeah, but you probably searched for it, or you probably typed it in somewhere. But no, I mean, it's happened to me now where I've talked about something, and then all of a sudden the ads are popping up, and I'm thinking, what's listening to me? Well, my phone's on. I gave it permission to listen to me. Is my computer listening to me? Are they looking at me right now?
Yeah.
I've got tape on my camera right now. It's freaked me out so bad. And now when you go to an airport, you'll see 1/3 of the people, they've got black tape or something over their cameras, because we all know what's going on. I mean, Snowden revealed that stuff. They made a movie about it. Now, if they're making movies about it, think about where they are now. Come on. It's pretty bad.
In the Conspiracies book, I go into the Edward Snowden thing, because I think it's very important to remind people that actually before Snowden came along, we were not aware of a lot of the electronic surveillance. He did, I think, do a service. I know some people have concerns about who he's working for, but I think he did do the world a service by saying, look, there's all these illegal surveillance programs going on. You need to be aware of them. But what has been shocking is that ever since then, it's almost like the world shrugged and went, oh, all right, well, we're under mass surveillance. I suppose we better get used to it. Whereas I think the idea was we were meant to be very alert to that, but instead we've become immune to it. And absolutely, what you've just described there is evidence of a mass surveillance society. We know that things like Alexa and Siri, even when you think they're not on, they are listening in. Because suddenly you'll find that, you're being targeted with adverts online, which are advertising things that you were talking about. You never said it to Siri. You never said it to Alexa directly. We know it's been admitted to that conversations are getting recorded. Yep, cameras on your phones and computers can activate without you knowing it. They are the best surveillance tool that was ever created, and we consent to it. I mean, when you go onto a website, and I've said this elsewhere, and it says, do you accept cookies? Well, you have to say yes, or it's not going to work properly. But what you're basically saying is, yes, I wish to be under surveillance. Thank you very much. So we give our consent. And the society has now been created where we do this as a matter of routine. So people like Snowden tried to warn us about this, but now we've all gone, oh, well, it's more convenient like this. And we've given into it. And when we do that, we give our consent for ever more control. And the authorities rub their hands together and go, great, we can carry on with this, because we don't make enough noise about it. And so this is always the way things go, and we gradually find that controls ramp up, and the amount of information they have about us now in every realm of our life is pretty scary stuff. But it's now become normal. We're in a world that Orwell could only have slightly dreamt of. The technology that exists now, had he known about that, he would have expanded his book even more, I'm sure, when he wrote 1984.
Yeah, for sure. We played that too. I mean, not that one, but we play War of the Worlds and some old stuff. They used to make radio shows about that, about they used to be sci-fi. You're so right. Like back in the day, all this was sci-fi. We're talking about now. If they could only see us now, right? If they could only see where we've come, I bet you they would really be shaking in their boots. Hey, you guys know, too, that we're going to be at the Ozark UFO Conference in April, right? So if you're in Arkansas, or you're in the South, come visit us the weekend of April the 10th at the Ozark UFO Conference. There'll be some cool speakers there. I'll be there. Barbara Charlton will be there. Mando will be there. And come hang out with us. We'll be right back. Andy Thomas is with us tonight.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal. There's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Hey, this is No Way Jose, a Northern California Piscean stuck in the Arizona desert. I'm a void walker, and I got the shoes to prove it. So what do I do when my soul yearns to delve deep into the realm of the unknown? I aim my satellite straight into the night sky and catch a smooth ride on the KTLK-DB radio waves. I tune into Lighting the Void with Joe Root on the Fringe FM.
Joe, Lighting the Void is the best show on the planet. This is Barney, your friend from Facebook. Thank you and all the crew for all you do. Namaste, my friend.
This is Macon from the foothills of North Carolina, and I am a void walker.
G'day, void walkers. This is Lily from down under Australia. The world may be small, the enigma is greater. So let your curiosity take you for a journey with Joe Root.
Hey, this is V, coming in from Central Maryland, and I am a void walker.
This is Kevin Doherty, a beginner void walker. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I know a little about a lot, and as Leonard Skinner said, I'll guess the rest. I learned a lot from Mr. Root in the show, and I heard it from the beginning. I knew right then he was going to be a new art pal. Thanks for all your shows, and keep it up.
Hey, this is Derek from Mass, a.k.a. the Night Stalker, and I'm a void walker.
This is Mark from Chicago, and I walk the void to ascertain what is consciousness.
My name is Jared Johnson, and I'm from Humboldt County, California. I do not know all of the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm a void walker. Thanks, Joe Root.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com. Or to speak with a trained consultant. Give Angioprim a call at 954-882-7221. That's 954-882-7221.
AncientLifeOil.com. For your CBD needs, just remember, AncientLifeOil.com. What does it do for the body, you ask? I can't say to the people in the suits that run the industry. Big Pharma's all over CBD because of its well, you know what I mean. Research the benefits of CBD on Google and come back to AncientLifeOil.com and purchase your CBD today. Non-GMO and all organic. You don't want to be using a petroleum product. You want to be using the cleanest CBD product on the market. AncientLifeOil.com. We even have CBD for your pet. Help your pet's discomfort. Help your discomfort. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Newly reduced prices to pass off the savings to the most important person, you. AncientLifeOil.com. And one more thing, we have topicals too. So if you have joint pain and some different issues that are going on in your body, you might want to use a topical. Think about it. AncientLifeOil.com.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
My name is Jake. I'm from Billings, Montana, and I am a void walker.
Hey, Joe Root. Thanks for lighting the void. This is Janine in the bluegrass of Kentucky, and I am a void walker.
What's up, guys? This is Damien from San Marcos, Texas, and I'm a void walker. I listen to the show to keep myself aligned with the world.
Hi, this is Laura, a.k.a. Laura Lavender. I'm from Las Vegas, and I listen to Lighting the Void because it helps me understand some of the strangest experiences I've had. So thanks for all that you do and for always being there for us, Joe.
You can tug all day long on a carpet that's been glued to the floor. Then you hurt.
There are many strong glues out there. Let's see, there's liquid nails and Gorilla Glue. You ever try to remove 3M 5200? That adhesive is strong. Then there's bathroom caulk, silicone rubber, adhesive tape, super glue, flex tape, and stickers. Graffiti. Scientists have come up with glues that stay stuck and can't be removed. Until now. Until Handyman Formula by DeBond. That's right. 95% of adhesives become unstuck when you spray Handyman Formula directly on them. Just spray, wait a few minutes, and remove. It's amazing. Most adhesives become unstuck when you use Handyman Formula. Visit DebondCorporation.com or mcmaster.com. Call 561-575-4200. This stuff really works. Handyman Formula by DeBond, a great Christmas gift.
This is Malorcas 45, fan of the Fringe FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in tonight with us on the Fringe FM here on Lighting the Void. Each and every night, we're here for you. You can go to the Fringe FM chat. If you go in there, you go to thefringe.fm/chat. Make sure that you find the hashtag Main Hall. You'll look to the left, you'll see a whole bunch of rooms there. And if you don't see Main Hall, click the little arrow drop down and you'll find it. The reason why we like Discord so much is because we have ultimate freedom in here. Nobody gets ban-hammered, shadow banned, anything like that. We can post links, all kinds of stuff. So it's fun. Come join us. Andy Thomas, our guest tonight, and his new book, his revised edition, is out. And Conspiracies, the facts, the theories, the evidence, fully revised. And I'm impressed by it, man. It's a really good book. Nobody dives into this stuff the way you do. I think it's like, well, I mean, they do, of course, but the way you look at it is completely balanced. And I think you're all about just trying to change the psychology of how we look at these things called conspiracies first and foremost. And that way we can really look at the facts, like the music industry. You brought that up earlier in the show today. And a colleague of ours, Ryan Gable, he always picks apart the Super Bowl halftime shows where they're incredibly esoteric. They're always doing some form of esoteric ritual, it seems, in these things now because they've got so many people looking at it. But the music industry is ripe full of this stuff, and there are some deep, crazy stories going on there. And I think you were spot on by having me look into that. I hope I can get Mark Devlin on the show. That would be great because there's a lot. If you want to look at conspiracy, it's huge in the music industry.
I mean, I think any industry that has an outreach to a lot of people is going to get used to basically program anybody that's tapping into it. And that doesn't mean, of course, that everybody in the music world or the film world knows that this is going on. Many are just doing things because they believe in it. And so we're not saying that it's all nefarious, but it does get used. And I think symbolism does get planted. And the more we're aware of that, then I think the more that we at least can realize that, we need to just be open to the fact we could be manipulated. And certainly there are people out there trying to point this out and researching things. And once you've had it pointed out to you that, oh, yeah, hang on. Yeah, there's that recurring symbol. There's this theme that keeps coming through. You realize that there's constantly a subtle programming of the population. And it may even be that, this is sort of, it's coming in without even people realizing what the underlying message is. But you only need a few people who know how to program this stuff in and what kind of symbolism to use, where this can seed itself, So, yeah, and we as consumers, we as normal everyday people, we just need to be a little bit more alert to it And, whenever you see an advert or, something, ask what is the message this is giving to me? Should I be open to this message, or should I just be concerned that it might be taking me down a path I don't want to go? Just always ask questions. Whenever you watch anything on the television or in films or listening, ask a simple question, which is this the whole story? And is the message that it appears to be giving me the actual message? Is there an underlying one? And actually, when you think a little bit more carefully, you realize that there is. And the classic, which many people have said over the years to ask is, who benefits from me believing this version?
There you go.
And then think about that and then consider whether you want to go along with that or not. It doesn't mean that everything is wrong or that everything is trying to catch you out, but sometimes it is, and you just need to have an awareness of it.
Right. I totally agree with you on that. Very well said. But how far do we go, right? That's what you ask in your book, and I think it's a very good question that you write about in this book. And we do have this attraction to a doomsday scenario. I can't tell you how many shows that I've heard about the doomsday clock on this very network we've talked about it. I'm not saying it's not worth talking about, but there is some type of strange psychological attraction to doom and gloom and, tragedy of the biggest kind, right? I don't know what that is. Why? Is it just the fear? Kind of like, is it why we go to horror movies, or is there something else going on? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, in the last section of the book, I do discuss this. I think that it comes partly down to our sort of long roots of sort of belief in prophecies and big events and the Bible, of course, and all these things that, have visions that are very apocalyptic. Literally, it's where the word comes from. In fact, apocalypse means revelation. That's actually what it means, rather than destruction. But we interpret it always as a destructive thing. And I think it's just kind of in our bones. It's always been used to control people. The threat of something unpleasant happening has always been hovering, whether it's something in the esoteric, the religious realms, or whether it's a government saying, well, if you don't go along with this terrible thing could happen. And it is just totally controlled by fear. And this is what happened. So, 9/11 was a good example. Now, whatever you think of the truth of 9/11, it was used to put fear into the populations of the whole world. And it did. All those images of the towers collapsing, it created a shockwave of fear throughout the world. And what it meant was that then when they said, well, we've got to do something about this, we need this war here, we need to go into this country here and do it, people went along with it because they were fearful. That happens every time there's a terrorist attack. It's always, well, we need to give up more freedoms now to protect ourselves from this. And there's a balance to be struck. I mean, we need security. Of course we do. There are people out there that will do unpleasant things and they need sorting out. But it's always used to justify giving away more freedoms than we should. But when we're in a state of fear, we do. So, this is David Icke's old equation, problem, reaction, solution. There is a problem, we all react and say, oh my goodness, something must be done. And what that normally means is we're asking to be controlled more. And that would seem to be the idea. I think we're often stirred into doing that. And fear's the key. And fear of climate change is another one. Even if you believe in climate change and we all want to do things to save the planet and make the environment good, of course we do. That is completely right. But what's happening at the moment is the fear of something terrible happening to the world is being used to justify all kinds of draconian policies and taxes, perhaps beyond the call of duty. And this is, again, where it's difficult, because if you say that, the people that are very green and genuinely caring about the environment then say, you're a denier. And you say, no, I'm not a denier, but I think we just need to be careful that we don't go so much into a world of fear that actually it's being misused. And to me, anyway, what you can wind up with is if people feel too much fear, they actually go into a state of inactivity. I mean, I've met a lot of people who said, well, that's it, the climate's finished, nothing I'm going to do is going to make any difference, I'll just carry on. So that's the problem. What you can do is actually disempower people and make them not act. So it could actually, in the long run, have a detrimental effect. But certainly fear is used continually to control the population. And we do need to be ever so aware. When somebody's trying to tell you to be fearful, ask why and just step back from it. And I'm aware that in this conversation, tonight, we've touched on areas that could create fear. And I am always trying to address that. And in the book to say, there are things to be concerned about, yes, but the idea of raising them is not to make you more fearful. It's to hopefully give you a resolve to do something to balance it, to get out there and do your little bit. Even if you can just do one thing, whether it's making, a local sort of issue, something to try and help, get rid of a local transmission mast, save your local bus stop, whatever it is, do something, put something good out there. And, there's a lot of evidence that there is a collective consciousness. And if enough positive waves goes through that and combats all the negative ones, which are constantly put out there in the mainstream media, maybe things will begin to change. And I am very much of that view. So, yes, there are things that we need to be aware of, but let's not get disempowered by it. And I think that's a very important thing to say here.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. And your new book is very, very good. You brought up a pretty cool story in there about McCartney from the Beatles and how we're so quick to jump on these stories when we think somebody's died. It's even worse now, though, man. Now there's the old Elvis thing, too, right? That's a big one. Not just the doom stuff, but somebody died or they really didn't, and it was covered up. And there's a really big one where people believe that there's a pastor here from Benton, Arkansas. It's right down the road from me, actually, who's really Elvis. It's all over YouTube and everything. And when you hear the guy sing, here's what gets me. He looks like Elvis, but when you hear the guy sing, he sounds just like Elvis. But, of course, he says he's not. But then again, how often has that happened? Are they really covering up deaths? What do you think? Like Epstein, all that stuff, do you think that was real? Do you think that was a possibility?
I mean, one thing that we tend to do as human beings is we latch on to people. And therefore, even evil people like Hitler, it's like when they die, they've become so much a part of the fabric of our world that we can't quite accept that they've gone. So, there were many sort of rumors that Hitler had survived and they're taking him away to Argentina or somewhere. And it's an intrigue that seems to attract people. But then, of course, when it's somebody positive like Elvis or, Jim Morrison of the Doors, when people die earlier than they should, I think we feel a grief around that. And to get that glimmer of hope that maybe somewhere they managed to live on in some kind of private world now, it makes us feel a little bit better. We don't feel the tragedy so much. Just that little hope that what if they did live on? It makes people feel better. And I understand that. To me, it's about evidence, though. There's got to be some real evidence, and it has to be pretty convincing. And sometimes it's more convincing than others. But certainly I think we live in a world where constantly, right, things are taken away from us. And so because we know authorities lie, there are instantly doubts. And that's when you get to famous assassination theories like JFK. Yes, there are many anomalies. But there is also, I think, there was such a shock at the time about his death. It couldn't just be a straightforward death anyway. And Princess Diana is another one. There are so many anomalies around her death that, I mean, most people in Britain, when you look at the polls, believe that crash that she died in was engineered. Most people feel that she was effectively murdered, that it was not just a drunk driver. And it comes partly because there are so many strange things around the circumstances around her death, but also because she was somebody that people didn't really want to let go. She offered a little beacon of hope. She was, sort of offering something new back then in the royal family. And I think there was such a wave of grief that she had suddenly gone that people couldn't quite accept that. But that said, when you do look at the circumstances surrounding her death, I do think, and I discussed this at length in the book, there are certainly grounds to believe she could have been taken out. And I know all the inquests say no, but I'm afraid they did not address a lot of crucial evidence. And it is worth finding out more about that before one comes to a conclusion about it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, spot on with that. Definitely spot on. And are you planning on doing any more speaking engagements? Do you coming into the States and doing any more? Because I would definitely go, man, if you did.
It is possible. I can't say at the moment. There is a possibility I will be over at some point again, hopefully early next year. But that is not definite yet, so I can't say too much. Obviously, if anybody wants to know about any talks coming up, if they go to my website, which is truthagenda.org, there's always a list there of any public talks coming up. And sometimes they'll be in other countries. Obviously, it's going to be quite often here in Britain. But yeah, I have spoken in America on quite a few occasions, and hopefully I will be back and always open to invitations. If anybody wants to invite me, always a pleasure.
Do you think we're more conspiratorial here in the States? I mean, I'm just going to assume that we are, but do you think we are?
Well, yes and no. I mean, what I find is that it gets spoken about more openly over there. I think that you have, in your constitution, more of an awareness of certain areas that, of free speech that you should expect. Although, as we've talked today, they are now being infringed on, definitely. Over here, what you tend to find is when you talk to people on a one-to-one, you find many people are at heart conspiracy theorists, but it's not so openly discussed. And there's a kind of a sort of a sense of embarrassment about talking about it. And I think what we tend to do here in Britain is we grumble and we moan quietly, but we don't tend to express things very loudly very often. And so, yeah, there's a lot of belief in conspiracy, but it's not perhaps quite the industry here that it is over there. You have like stations like your own that will very often discuss this. We have a few like that here, but not to the same degree. But I do think it's because you have a history of being able to discuss everything and having free speech about everything. And I hope that that will long remain. And that is why the current program of censorship is treading on things like the Constitution, and that concerns me. And everybody should fight to keep free speech because it is currently under threat. There's no question about it. But yeah, I think you're doing a bit better on that, whereas over here I think people get sort of cowed into silence more easily. But well, we're doing the best we can. There's people out here trying to wake everybody up and keep the conversations going because it is so crucial to do that.
Yeah, it is. And I think we are. I think we're a little bit more conspiratorial here, but for a good reason. It's not a bad thing to question things. And that's what I think the biggest thing we could take away from tonight's conversation is be careful of polarization. I've brought that up on this show so many times that is what's killing us from finding the truth about all of the big questions in life. Is the minute you become polarized, you've lost your rationality. And then you do confirmation bias, things like that. Confirmation bias when you're studying things or when you're researching. You don't look for anything that negates what you're saying, which is why I like people like you, actually. Andy, I like having you on the show. I like talking to you. Some of the people like that aren't the most popular. I mean, if you want to take bias, let's look at Alex Jones, for example. Right? We obviously know he's conservative, and we want to protect our media and all of these things. I think, even though I don't agree with him, he still has the right to say ridiculous things, and yet he was crucified, man. I've never seen anybody on the chopping block the way they put him up there. Was it justified? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that they've made an example of Alex Jones, and perhaps Alex walked into that trap a little bit too easily because he was so loud in his views and so, very sort of flamboyant in the way he put it out there. Of course, he was going to be the obvious one to take down and make an example of, which they have done. No, look, I don't agree either with everything Alex says, but some of the things he says are valid. Again, what's happened is free speech has been damaged by this. But that's kind of what they're doing now. They're making examples of certain individuals and certain cases, and then they're getting a polarized reaction. They're getting people to say, how disgraceful that he is saying this or that person is doing this. We must stop this. And thus they give in to infringements on free speech. And that's how our freedom leaks away, because people think they're doing it for the right reason. They think they are protecting people from these dangerous individuals trying to undermine society. But of course, once you take their voices away, you realize then what a crucial role the alternative voices play. You always need those alternative voices. And the current program that the mainstream media and the authorities seem to have to silence them, to me, is madness, because what you're doing is creating a very one-toned world that sooner or later is going to sort of fall over the big lump in the carpet where you've pushed everything under the carpet and you're saying, don't talk about that, you mustn't look at that. But it won't go away. It will come out as extremism. It will come out in not good ways because people are not allowed to have those conversations legitimately anymore. And that's going to create a very sick society, or a sicker society. A better world is to keep this stuff in the open, shine the light. Let's look at the evidence. Let's try and understand as much as possible both sides and the arguments, and not condemn each other for having different views. That's a wise world. But at the moment, conspiracy, talk of conspiracy, it's being hidden away from us. And that's why, I've written the book Conspiracies, to try to get this out there in a balanced way and get people talking about it again, where, it's not seen as a terrible thing to be having the discussion. But yeah, it's certainly, we do live in a world now where we're being further and further encouraged never to refer to these things. And that, to me, is not a sensible world to live in.
Yeah, it's not. And I want everybody to know, just real quick, just let me say this. I watch Alex Jones for entertainment purposes. I mean, he says stuff like, this chemical's turning the frogs gay. Well, regardless if it does or not, it's funny that he brings stuff up like that. To me, I think it's funny. I watch him for entertainment, and still I believe in his right to free speech. And I think what it is, Andy, too, and this is probably the last thing that we got time to discuss just really quick, is I think people get afraid. They're afraid that there are people like Alex Jones that will start a cult of sheeple, is what people call them, but I don't want to call them that, and cause an uproar. They're afraid that this is what they're thinking, a whole bunch of stupid people are going to follow this guy, and then we're going to live in a country where we're going to be in a civil war or something over a bunch of stupid stuff. So it's a lot of fear that's trekking in their mind, and that's why they shut it down. Is that justified? We should have the rights to do whatever, regardless of what happens. Freedom is freedom to me.
Well, that is one difference between the past, even the recent past, where conspiracy thinkers were just dismissed as a bit mad. Now that's changed to they are actively dangerous to society, and we need to stop their voices because they are endangering everybody. And that's the idea that's being pushed out there in the mainstream. And we need to resist that. But we do also then perhaps we need to be aware of that and not sound too extreme, and try and be as measured and balanced as we can, because I find when you are measured and balanced, people will come to these ideas. They will be more open to them. When we shake our fists and we get very agitated and indeed very polarized, there's actually more resistance to believing in it. So we need to try to bring people back a little bit more to the middle and have reasonable conversations. And I find when you offer people the opportunity to do that, they often will be open to it. But it's just bringing them to that point of being aware of this knowledge. That's the key thing. That's the starting point.
That's right. Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure having you here again. It really has. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
truthagenda.org is the website. Y'all check out his new book, Conspiracies, the facts, the theories, the evidence, fully revised edition. We'll go there, and tomorrow night we'll have Tobias Lars on the program, and we're going to get into some deep stuff with Tobias. Always a good time. I hope you're ready for some deep and dark sarcasm. As long as you can handle it, we'll get into that too. We'll be here at the same time, same channel. Up next is the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Please don't copy the show without written permission. Main executive producer is Pacho, a.k.a. Patrick Newland. I want to thank Don, Amanda, Jeremy Scott, all of you in the chat. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.